welcome everyone to our first in-person meeting of the Board of Commissioners for this group. And I'll call the meeting to order and ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Commissioner Waldridge.
Present.
Commissioner Thompson.
Present.
Commissioner May.
Present.
Commissioner Unger.
Present.
Mayor Wilkerson.
Present. Okay.
Mayor, I need to, if we have no objections, I'd like to move action item number 10, TIF development, to the first item, as we have Mr. James Parsons on the phone, and I hate for him to sit through all of this
Before citizens' comments,
before citizens' comments, if you don't mind.
any objection? Okay, seeing no objection, we will move item number 10 to the first item. Okay. And this is a first reading. We need a sponsor. Okay, and we have a sponsor. I'll ask City Solicitor to read.
This is a long one. An ordinance of the City of Frankfort, Kentucky, making certain findings concerning and establishing a development area for economic development purposes within the city to be known as the Downtown Frankfort Development Area, approving a local participation agreement between the city, the county of Frankfort, Kentucky, and the Department of Finance of the City of Frankfort, Kentucky as the agency, establishing an incremental tax special fund for payment of project costs and redevelopment assistance, designating the Department of Finance of the City of Frankfort, Kentucky as the agency responsible for oversight, administration, and implementation of the development area, authorizing the mayor and other officials to take such appropriate actions as are necessary or required in connection with the establishment of the development area. This ordinance establishes the Downtown Frankfort Development Area for economic development purposes within the city, approves a local participation agreement between the city, the county, and the city finance department as the administering agency, establishes an incremental tax special fund for payment of project costs and redevelopment assistance, designates the city finance department as the agency responsible for oversight, administration, and implementation of the development area, and authorizes the mayor and other officials to take appropriate action connected with the development area.
So is this, we're just codifying the TIF arrangement that we've already voted on, is that correct?
Yes,
Okay.
that is basically what this does. It officially puts everything into place, establishes the development area, sets up the administering agency, and adopts the local participation agreement.
No. Yes, Commissioner Thompson?
Solicitor Ross, I have a couple questions, and maybe Mr. Parsons might jump in here too. We are not, there has been some citizen concern that has been relayed to myself and others, I think, that we are somehow creating a new taxing district on downtown properties or anything of that nature. So I just want to make sure we're not doing anything that would change the tax structure for downtown businesses and locations located within the downtown area.
No, absolutely not. That is not what this does. It just establishes basically what we've been talking about for the past year almost now. So.
Okay, and my second question is, the designated agency is the Department of Finance of the City of Frankfort. Does the statute require one of the local governmental entities that's involved with the TIF to have their finance department be the agency that deals with that?
Jim can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the answer to that is no, you're not required to have your finance department be the administering agency. You could set up a separate agency, but we, early on in the discussions, decided that might be the best route to take.
So, was it ever discussed? And I don't know. Was the foundation that was previously set up that for economic development, was it ever discussed as the agency that would deal with that?
I don't believe that it was.
Okay. All right. I just don't know the discussions because I wasn't involved in those original discussions. So I just wanted to check and see why that that language is in there. Thank you for answering that.
Any other discussion on this ordinance? Okay. Seeing none, do we need a motion?
I'm sorry. It's just first reading.
First reading.
I do have one question. So at the end, it says it authorizes the mayor and other officials to take appropriate action connected with the development area. I know this is the first reading. We'll have another reading. I'm not sure when we will be coming out of the emergency form of government. Will that also say city manager as well? Or will that have anything to do with city manager once we move back to the city manager form of government officially out of the emergency?
Basically, what that's doing is authorizing the mayor as the signatory
Right.
to sign whatever documents come along. If it's anything that you all need to vote on, we would bring it before the Board of Commissioners.
Okay.
So it would not, I don't believe that it would have the city manager's involvement because the mayor is the one who's required by law to sign.
Right.
So-
And so we'll receive a copy of that information in
Yes.
decent time of the mayor signing, so we are aware and can keep the forefront on this.
Absolutely.
That would be great.
What's the definition of other officials there? Just so, is there a legal definition or is there?
That, Jim, do you know that one? Oh,
Can hear you, Jim.
His mic's not on.
Jim, we
We
can't
can't hear you, Jim. Still can't hear you. I'm sorry.
Not sure what's
I
happening.
just added to that reading.
Okay.
Oh, I thought that was
I
coming
thought
from
that was
him.
him.
I was like, wait, that's the way to come here.
We still can't hear you, Jim.
Is Bobby?
We'll have our IT person look at that. Any other discussion that is not for Jim? Or Mr. Parsons?
And I'm happy to take a look at that, actually, but I think what that means is if the agency, if the finance department as the agency needs to sign off on something, anybody else who is authorized to take action in
Okay.
connection with this agreement, it would mean those people
Okay.
that are specifically referred to in the agreement.
If you talk to Mr. Parsons and get a different opinion,
Yes.
will you at least let me know so I can kind of
Absolutely.
understand that information?
I'll
Thank you
follow
very
up
much.
with Jim afterwards.
Thank you.
Yep, that's all I have.
Okay. No other discussion? Okay. So it moves forward to the second reading. No motions needed, right? Okay.
Thank you, Mayor.
You are
Thank you,
welcome.
Jim.
Thank you, Mr. Parsons.
He said thank you. He said thank you.
Can they see us? Okay, next up, we have citizens' comments. And first, we'll ask those in attendance. Let's see,
Bobby's
do we-
bringing up the.
Okay, we're gonna list
The
it.
sheet, yeah.
And please keep your comments to 5 minutes, and our city solicitor she'll notify you when you have a minute left. All right, so first we'll have James Hale. Or Mr. Hale, thanks for coming tonight.
I was under the assumption that we had to wear masks today.
Okay, good one.
First of all, I would like to say thank you to a number of people before we get started. First, I'd like to thank our commissioner and commissioners and the mayor that we have now, who are proving to be leaders of action and integrity in Frankfort, holding to their word and not content just to, as Shannon Griffith said, kick this can down the road any longer, as Frankfort politicians have done in the past. I'd also like to thank Lynn Cruz, Katie Doyle, Delvin, and numerous others who are members of our community and are showing the stamina necessary to advocate for this ordinance change year after year after year in a grassroots effort to right this wrong in our community. I'd like to thank Mary Page, who is our city's animal control officer and has visited my house on more than one occasion in response to false reports of me harboring chickens illegally. Ms. Page handles her job as animal control officer with professionalism, style, and grace, and is someone I think I can now call friend. I would also like to thank the State Journal, who, after the last meeting that I was on online, put out a survey of whether people were in favor or opposed to chickens within the city, and over 40% more people voted yes, they were in favor of an ordinance change than who voted no. And I would lastly like to thank a handful of folks that I have talked to in Silver Lake subdivision and other HOAs who were willing to listen and ask questions, as I did the same in discussing backyard chickens. Where I expected hostility, I found openness, and I thank them for that. Chickens are perhaps the most studied bird in the animal kingdom. They are smart, easy to care for, and the foundation of people seeking to get their hands dirty in producing their own food and getting back to nature. They are pets with benefits, producing about an egg a day, which are often shared with friends and neighbors to create a bond unifying what would other be a disjointed neighborhood. Chickens create community out of isolated households. They cause neighbors to learn each other's names, talk over the fence, share stories, and create a common bond. In comparison to dogs, chickens, particularly hens, are much quieter. Laying hens at their loudest have about the same decibel level as human conversation, which is 60 to 70 decibels. The noise level of a rooster crowing is about the same as a barking dog, 90 decibels. One of the complaints that you will hear about chickens is disease, in particular salmonella. According to the Center for Disease Control, salmonella causes about 380 deaths per year in the United States. While many cases are caused by contaminated produce and not poultry, even if just 10% of those are chicken related, that beats all the other ways that chickens kill people, hands down. Yes, chickens do carry salmonella, as do dogs, cats, turtles, frogs, and even that cute little girl who was my first kiss in high school. The CDC recommends exactly the same protocols to prevent disease transmission from chickens as it does for protecting disease transmission from dogs and cats. Wash your hands and don't kiss them. Elsewhere in dangerous animal news, dogs bite an average of 4.5 million Americans per year.
1 minute.
Causing 6,000 to 13,000 hospitalizations and 30 to 50 deaths in the U.S. every year. In my research, apart from disease, I could find just one death in the U.S. directly related to chickens. That was in 2011, when a man was stabbed to death by a knife strapped to a rooster's leg in an illegal cockfight in California in 2011. Stop pretending chickens are a health risk. They are not. I urge this Board of Commissioners to pass an ordinance in favor of non-crowing chickens, no more restrictive than the ordinance controlling dogs in our community. In conjunction with the ordinance change, I urge the board to advocate for a series of short seminars in the community to educate the public on the new ordinance and the proper protocol in raising chickens within the city. I'd like to volunteer my personal time to help staff or whoever else might need my help to develop reasonable ordinances allowing non-crowing chickens within the city. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Mr. Hale. Next up, we have Truitt and Janine. I'm sorry, I mispronounced the name. Kokonauer. Thank you, Kokonauer. Would you like to come up together? You're welcome. You want to come to the microphone so we can hear you better?
I'm Truitt Kokonauer, 1106 Man o' War Drive. I've been a resident of Silver Lake subdivision for around 15 years. I haven't kept count, but it's been an enjoyable experience. And I don't see that introducing chickens into the neighborhood would enhance my good memories of that. But then I just live there. I don't have to keep the chickens. At least I hope I won't. I grew up on a small farm. We had chickens. Most people had chickens. My job was to see that the little door to the chicken house was closed each night to keep any predators out, because that would have been the only access that a fox or whatever would have. And most of the time, I did it. Occasionally, I had a lapse, and after dark, I was reminded, did you close the chicken house? And so I'd trot out, open the gate to the barnyard, go to the chicken house, run right back, fasten that gate as fast as I could, and get back to the house in safety, in my mind. So I think the greatest memory, the most odious memory that I have is on the occasions, two that I remember of in growing up, of having to clean out the chicken house, the roost. And that sticks with you. It's a stench, not pleasant, but I sure enjoyed eggs for breakfast and fried chicken, other times. And I recognize the importance of chickens. But my opinion is that it's best if they were reserved to the farm, not in town.
Thank you, Mr. Coconut.
Thank you.
Next on the list, we have Delvin. Is Delvin? There you go, Delvin.
Thank you, Commission. It's a pleasure to be here. And I really do hope that somehow these words that I present to you today may somehow sway you to the opinion that Frankfort will benefit from the use of backyard chickens. It wasn't long ago when people felt the full effects of the breakdown of the supply chain. We had grown people beating each other up over toilet paper. Who would have imagined such a weird scenario to play out in real life? As they say, sometimes truth is, in fact, stranger than fiction. But it wasn't fiction. If people have the ability themselves to be self-sufficient, does it not help to reduce our carbon footprint as individuals? If individuals exercise their ability to be self-sufficient, would that behavior not be in line with those who wrote those founding documents that establish that it is we, the people, that this government is beholden to? Is it not those same words that established a government that was a representative government, a government in which the people instilled their trust to exercise decisions for those people? As I came here today without any notes, I wanted to speak from my heart because this is something that I truly do believe in. I thought about some of the detractors of having backyard chickens. As Mr. Hale stated, some people have a paranoia and exaggerated fear of the health risks of backyard chickens. I remember seeing an article that was passed around on Facebook, and as you all know, there's plenty of informative and factual information spread on Facebook daily that we as consumers love to quickly read the headlines and ignore the body of the context. Within the body of this context, it spoke about how backyard chickens were responsible for salmonella in 43 states. Oh my God, let's run for the hills. But if one were to continue to read into this article, they would recognize the fear porn that was evident. If we think about in the United States, about 1.65 million people end up being infected. When you think about the idea that 26,500 people were hospitalized over this, salmonella in general, overall. When it came to backyard chickens, however, there were 34 people hospitalized. 34. Over 400 people died because of salmonella. None of them occurred because of backyard chickens. So then I thought to myself, well, if I presented a logical argument against the health risks, then maybe this commission would be benevolent enough to offer to the people an opportunity to own backyard chickens. I heard one of the detractors mention that it was the stench of the chickens in 90-degree weather that would possibly deter a yes vote on backyard chickens. And I thought to myself, this is just fine, because nobody asked me if I wanted my tax dollars going to help support a company where I have to smell MASH.
1 minute.
Nobody decided that they were going to put this vote to the people to decide if people in Frankfort wanted to smell MASH. But in this instance, I don't know why in this particular instance it needs to be something that goes to the body of the people to decide. If the people were to decide on anything, it is that we decide to elect you folks to make the decisions for us. This democracy is a republic, a democratic republic, one where the people entrust their decisions up to you. So I humbly ask you today, please move forward to allow backyard chickens to help us reduce our carbon footprint and to become more self-sufficient citizens. Thank you today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Carol Banks.
I wear a mask, not because I haven't been vaccinated, but because I don't know who else hasn't been vaccinated. So I'll take it off just to speak. Thank you for your time. I want to almost tip my hat to Shakespeare and say I come to bury Caesar, not to praise him. So anyway, with that being said, you can look at the white hair and know that I've been around a while. And unfortunately, as wonderful as Berea College is, they forgot to teach me about histoplasmosis. And when I heard that word when I was 42 or 3 years old from my eye specialist, because at work in that one afternoon, I was tired and I rubbed my left eye. And I realized, my gosh, I can't see very much out of my right eye. So I immediately looked for the best specialist I could find in Lexington and went to see him. And he looked at it and he said, are you familiar with a disease called histoplasmosis? And I said, no. All those years at Berea College, they just didn't teach me about histoplasmosis, and I'm sorry they didn't, but what are we talking about? And from an old girl who lived in eastern Kentucky and grew up on a farm and had chickens and helped get the chicken house cleaned out so we could plant the potato onions in November every year, I thought, yeah. When I heard him talk about histoplasmosis and what chicken excrement, that's the word I would have been taught to use by my dad. If you want to say chicken poop, that's what it is. Unfortunately, for me, a mother bird had decided to roost in the awning, and she cleaned out her nest after the babies left, and then I cleaned up the patio after she cleaned out her nest. And 3 weeks later, I was diagnosed with a disease called histoplasmosis that can do two things, big time. It can affect the lungs and cause scarring. It doesn't put us in hospitals, The treatment is much like chemotherapy, and there's no guarantee that it works. What had all happened to me was the other thing, which is scary as it can be if you're a 43-year-old single mother who's rearing a son, a 12-year-old son, by yourself. Some of you may know what that feels like. So I was told that the retina in my right eye was bleeding. And the only hope that we had of dealing with that was an argon laser and a steroid placed behind the eye so that it could reach the retina. Because what bleeding causes in a retina is it causes it to, instead of lying flat, it causes it to become a dome. And then you can't see. Those little cones and rods that are there mess up. So I'm 43 years old with a 12-year-old son to rear and educate, and I'm facing the fact that I could become blind because it also could affect the other eye. And actually, over time, it has to a degree. Fortunately, it's in the peripheral vision, so it's not there in my sight line yet. But I come to tell you that I live at 110 Sequoia. As you know, the lots in Indian Hills, if you do, are about 150 feet wide, if that much, and less than 200 feet deep. And if two of my neighbors decided to have chickens, even if one of them did, because the danger is that the spores from the chicken manure are picked up and blown. You know, if everybody could live in that 150 by 200 box without anything that they do affecting a neighbor, that would be very handy.
1 minute.
But unfortunately, that's not the way it happens. Spores are picked up, blown, and I could go blind from having chickens next door to me. And I'm 81 years old, and I'd like to get through the rest of my years, whatever they are, taking care of myself. And if you're anywhere near 80, folks, you'll know how important it is that you can take care of yourself when you get older. So I'm here simply to say, very quietly, I am so sorry to be against this, because I grew up with chickens. I actually had a bantam rooster who was a pet. But I know the danger of it. I never heard of histoplasmosis before. I have learned to live with it all these years, and I have to see my ophthalmologist about every 3 months. I went one time through a period where I had to see him once a week, a retinal specialist. So if you think the pandemic was scary,
That's time.
it's just about the same. Thank you.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate your time.
Appreciate
Thank you.
the words. Next up, Carol and Georgie Burton. Would you both like to?
Thank you, folks, for allowing me to speak. My name's Earl Burton. I live in Silver Lake subdivision, and I'm here this evening to appeal to the commission to not change or add any ordinances that allow chickens in city limits. Why do we need to introduce other health possibilities? We're still on the edge of COVID. We don't know, it's getting better, clearly, but we're still dealing with it. So why open up something else, some other possibility? CDC website, I guess we read the same one. Cautions are linked to backyard poultry, such as salmonella, bird flu, avian flu, and conditions and cautions about small children handling chickens. So these things are possible, okay? That's all I'm saying. Silver Lake has a homeowners association, and most homeowners associations do not allow livestock in the subdivision, except for household pets. If an ordinance is passed to allow chickens in the city, it makes the HOA rules harder to enforce. And residents of subdivisions with HOAs, they move to these subdivisions for the governance of the HOAs. So if you pass an ordinance saying it's legal, it makes it a whole lot difficult for the HOAs to enforce the restrictions of the subdivision. It ends up in, to my knowledge, court fights. is basically how it is. So, you know, because if you legalize it, the argument's gonna be it overrides the HOA restrictions. You know, Silver Lake and Indian Hills, not too long ago, had a problem with coyotes roaming the subdivision. I walked out one day on the sidewalk in Silver Lake, and there's a coyote on the sidewalk. And we walk in the park, over in Lakeview Park, saw several coyotes back at that time. Now, I don't think there's a known problem now, but chickens could attract these again. So, again, and possibly even other wildlife like raccoons. So, you know, please consider those things when you're considering what to do with the ordinance request. And another item too is who's going to enforce any of the problems that occur from the chickens? You know, the unsightliness, you know, the chickens getting loose, and other complaints. You know, where will the complaints be directed? The health department, the police, the Humane Society? And do any of these agencies have the extra bandwidth to deal with it? And then, you know, what kind of cost are we talking about to enforce these things too? So with those things, I would appreciate you taking that into consideration when you make a decision. So thank you for your time. Oh, one other thing. My neighbor here gave me this. He didn't get signed up here, so he wanted to point out that one thing that the homeowners association does when a pet owner moves into the association, it's basically a poop bag for pets, the people that walk their dogs and stuff like that. And basically the concern is that it contaminates the water supply. So you also have a very similar possibility with chickens if they were allowed in the neighborhood. So again, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burton. And next up, we have David Benaggio.
Oh, well, he's gonna let me speak.
Okay.
I didn't even know.
Process of elimination.
Well, that's all right.
That enough to you?
I'm just gonna, just a few minutes, that's all. The city gives these to us.
So we can see you.
Oh, great.
Could you say your name for?
David Panaggio. A little bit like Joe DiMaggio, but P and an N. The city gives these to our welcoming committee when someone moves into the neighborhood. Sometimes we bring them some Panera bread and some raisin cinnamon bread and a little welcome package. And in the welcome package is this little doggy thing here. And I guess it's sponsored by the Frankfort Franklin County Stormwater Program. And I don't know who actually is in charge of the stormwater program, but maybe I should look it up. Because I've only been here 3 years. I came from Lexington, but so I'm a transplant. But it says here on this, it says, did you know pet waste left on the ground washes into the storm drains and pollutes Frankfort and Franklin County's creeks and streams? Please clean up your pet's waste. Clean water starts with you. And then down at the bottom, it says a message is a courtesy of the Frankfort Franklin County Stormwater Program, and it's got the two phone numbers. So we just want to address that because maybe there are responsible owners, just like this gentleman here. Maybe he, I don't know because I'm not over there at your place, but maybe you compost. Maybe you do things like that, and you can educate people on that. How about the people that don't compost, though? That's my question. Is the waste going to end up in our groundwater? That's the question. Just like we have irresponsible dog owners, are we going to have irresponsible chicken owners? And again, who's going to address this? Is Mary going to go out and address? I know Mary. I've met Mary. Is she going to go out? Or are we going to have a chicken person? Or like, but that's my concern is the groundwater. And not everybody will be as responsible as you. And I mean, if they were all responsible, just like dogs, yeah. We have people that are not responsible with dogs, so we have to call Mary. So, But that's my concern is the stormwater, and especially in Silver Lake, because all our stormwater, we've had several problems over there. And I do live in Silver Lake, by the way. So, thank you for your time, and thank you for the complimentary doggy bag. Doggy.
Welcome to Frankfort, Mr. Panagio. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Katie Doyle.
Hi, I'm Katie Doyle. I've been before the last city commission. I've given a huge talk about chickens before. Also, in addition to be a chicken advocate, I'm also your local wildlife rehabilitator. And so in order to become a wildlife rehabilitator, you take a course on zoonotic diseases, which are diseases that are passed from animals to human, how to prevent them so you as a rehabilitator remain safe and healthy to help your local wildlife. And so obviously I'm in support of a backyard chicken ordinance in Frankfort, but I am also willing to partner with Cooperative Extension or whoever needed, or the health department, to lend my knowledge on zoonotic diseases and how to prevent them, and offer little courses if the ordinance is passed on responsible chicken ownership, how to keep yourself safe when you clean a coop. And the reality is wildlife are everywhere, whether we see them or not, especially judging by my phone ringing off the hook constantly, because I'm always getting calls about raccoons and possums and foxes and everything in town, because I live on Lions Drive. And they're in my own neighborhood too. And so the reality is, in the world we live in, we can't be without, there's always a risk that you can contract a zoonotic disease. Whether you are bitten by a neighbor's dog and it has to be put into quarantine because of the rabies risk, or there's issues with the Canada goose, who likes our lake subdivisions. Those pose a huge, I agree, issue to the stormwater. But that's wildlife. That's still not even chickens. And so chickens aren't going to increase the waste load exponentially, that we wouldn't be able to handle it and handle the pet waste responsibly. That I don't think it's not going to increase it enough to really, I think, become a public health concern, especially when there are so many great ways to mitigate those risks. And so please, I support, and if you all have any questions, feel free to reach out. My email is on the list. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Katie, and I appreciate all that you do for our community, and I appreciate your live videos, as my son absolutely loves watching you feed the baby possums and things of that nature, so he watches as though it's his own little animal channel, so thank you.
Next, we have Donovan Hayes.
I'll give my time to James. James,
Okay.
do you have any more you want to add?
I think we've provided you all with a document that identifies some of the myths and realities of keeping chickens. I think that pretty much covers it. Everything that's in there. I appreciate the folks over in Silver Lake showing up, and and I hear their concerns and so forth. I think there are some things that can be addressed and still allow chickens within our city limits. I urge you all to do what you need to do in order to push this forward. I would like to see it move in a progressive manner, rather than too many delays and so forth, because this ordinance has been a victim of those in the past quite frequently. It's a good way to kill an ordinance, is delays. So I would urge you to, the research is done, the field has been plowed, there are other cities doing this extremely successfully in the Kentucky area, and I would urge you to move forward with this. Thank you.
I have a question.
Sure.
Mr. Hill, so I appreciate the information you've given us, and I did not bring the last packet that you guys put together for us. But what would you say would be an average size lot that would be appropriate for maybe, let's say, 4 hens to be sufficiently kept, but at the same time not on top of, I guess, someone else, or being able to be well kept?
I'm not going to give you a number. I think that having ordinance out there on noise control and odor control provide sufficient management of those issues to keep people from really going crazy with too many. I'm a big believer in having ordinances that are easy to administer and that are practical and science-based. And I have not seen anything that relates this size of lot for this many chickens. There are a lot of variables in there. How often do, what is the husbandry practices like? Do they compost or do they not compost? I personally feel that the noise ordinances and the odor ordinances provide sufficient boundaries for keeping people, and also the requirements to keep your animals on your lot, rather than running all over the place. So I really don't have a number that I can give you. Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Howe.
I would like to oppose about 90% of what you said. You're talking about ordinances and things, and we've yet to be determined who's going to enforce these ordinances and who's, yes, responsible. You have responsible pet owners as well as you have irresponsible pet owners. And you're going to have the same thing with chickens, and you're going to have to call on somebody to enforce these things. So you're adding workload to an already burdened system. And, if it's minimal, that salmonella is not an issue related to chickens, but it is. You can't debate it is. So someone is very likely to get salmonella from chickens. So again, I'm very much opposed to this, and I hope you folks consider those things.
Thank you all. Mr. Howe, are we at 5 minutes on this?
We are at 5
Okay.
minutes.
Will we be allowed to?
You can still ask a question if the chair still allows.
Well, will we have time to make comment ourselves before?
Oh,
We're
yes,
gonna
it's
do
on.
it. It's on the agenda.
Okay, all right, then
Sure.
I'll wait.
Thank you.
If I might say, there's one other piece that I didn't get to say, and that is that personally and for the city, an ordinance of this kind to be allowed would certainly be, there's lawyers on the dais and they can speak to this, but I would think there would be an element of liability to it that you might not think of.
Thank you. All right. Do we have any online comments? We're hybrid now, so we have in-person and we have online comments.
Do you want me to read those?
Sure, please.
Okay. Okay. Let's see. Okay, the first comment is from Lynn Cruz. And she says, I am unable to make tonight's meeting regarding the ability for city citizens to have a small number of chickens without roosters in their yard. I support city citizens being able to have chickens city rules in their yards with proper containment. Here are some of my reasons why. To decrease the negative environmental impact when transporting food from farm to consumer across long distances, people have been encouraged to eat more local. What is more local than having your own eggs in your backyard? As a chicken owner, you have added benefit of having fertilizer for your garden and have less chance of contracting a potentially deadly tick-borne disease, as your chickens will eat the ticks. A small number of happy hens can become part of the family and teach young children responsibility, accountability, and appreciation for nature. I won't be having chickens in my backyard since I'm not home enough to be a good chicken parent, but I would be delighted to live next door to neighbors who have them. Who knows, I might get some gift eggs from time to time. And that was Lynn Cruz. Next one is from Amy Mitchell. I am unable to attend this evening's meeting, but would like to again voice my support of Urban Chickens in Frankfort. They will provide an excellent food source to the Frankfort community, some neighborhoods of which are food deserts. They also act as natural pest control and create fertilizer for gardening. Vote yes to Urban Chickens. And that was Amy Mitchell. And the last comment that we have is actually regarding, looks like abandoned properties. And it's from Diane Strong. Let's see here. And I strongly encourage the Commission to address and expedite the process by which it deals with abandoned properties. Not only are they a blight to Frankfort, a safety concern, and an expense to the city, they are an opportunity that is being lost. Right now, we have a great number more looking to invest in properties here in Frankfort than there are properties available. We are fortunate in that investors are finally bringing their money and spending it here in Frankfort to refurbish, rescue, and make available properties to the citizens of Frankfort and those desiring to relocate here. Abandoned properties, if the Commission and the city take advantage of laws provided to them, can be an opportunity for investors and those looking to move to Frankfort by providing the much-needed housing. There are vacant properties and lots that have sat for years being mowed by the city and not paying taxes. It is time the city take legal action and acquire those properties. I encourage the Commission to expedite the process. Thank you for your time. I appreciate all you do. Keep up the excellent work. Diane Strong. And that was it.
Okay, thank you. And thanks for those comments.
That is it.
And now that citizens' comments section is over, we'll move on to staff reports. And do we have any staff reports?
I don't have nobody had anything to give me.
Okay, no staff reports. We're moving on to discussion items. First item on the discussion list is the urban chicken discussion, so.
I have a
Okay,
comment.
Commissioner Thompson, question or comment?
I know everyone's shocked that I had something to say about this. I will say that from the time that I decided to run for this position to about 20 minutes before this meeting, this has been the most talked about issue. This has been about the most controversial issue. And that is a little frustrating to me, understanding that there are significant needs in the realm of economic development, and there are needs with regard to completing some infrastructure things that the city of Frankfort has needed for years. But during the time that I was running for office and the time that I have been in office, my position has been and has always been that I am not in favor of urban chickens. That is not just because I have, listened to old wives' tales or, just come to this opinion on my own because I don't like chickens. I've done my research. In a CNN article with a byline of Jen Christensen and Deborah Goldschmidt, it was July 26, 2018, it discussed an outbreak of salmonella of 212 people across 44 states. There were 10 such outbreaks between 2011 and 2018. Prior to 2011, there were 70 outbreaks across the United States linked to live poultry. 70 since 2000. Those people who are very young, who are very old, or have compromised immune systems are most at risk. That sounds very familiar, things we've heard over the last 18 months. And they are at risk for complications and severe cases of illness. In an additional article from DVM 360, they reported that University of California, Davis had studied urban chickens in mainly the state of Colorado, but across the nation, and the associated disease, and found that, and I quote, provisions governing animal slaughter and routine veterinary care are rare, preventing a concern for monitoring and intervening in public health crises. That's not just a crisis, that's crises because of the lack of language with regard to regulation. That article goes on to say the Center for Disease Control and Prevention found that more than 1,100 people that year in particular, 2017, had contracted salmonella from chickens and ducks. 250 of those people were hospitalized, much different than the numbers that we had previously heard, and one person died. A rate that was 4 times higher than 2015, just 2 years before, as more cities added allowing more poultry in urban settings. Now, I've had numerous discussions with citizens who told me their horror stories of dealing with histoplasmosis in their lives, in their children's lives, the loss of eyesight at a fairly young age, and the loss of vision for children, and due to exposure to chicken and poultry in what we would probably call a regular setting, in a rural setting. This article went on to say that many regulations in these areas were also lacking with regard to cleanliness, ventilation, and food and water requirements. And researchers found at UC Davis that ordinances governing the slaughter and backyard chickens occurred in only half of the municipalities in Colorado, and many were vague. Even with the seemingly slim decrees surrounding chicken ownership, Brinkley said more poultry ordinances have been passed or modified in Colorado in the last 5 years than in the previous 100. And as they have, so have the increased rates of disease. Again, I've also heard from concerned citizens with experience with poultry, from people who actually own urban chickens already in this city in violation of city code, that discussed with me the terrible smell that they've endured from nearby neighbors, not even just next door neighbors, but close neighbors. They've also had the threat of predators nearing their properties in urban areas. Just 3 years ago, during a dry summer, we had irregular sightings of coyotes all throughout the city limits. We are asking for the possibility of bringing more numerous and dangerous predators in our neighborhoods, where our children play and where our pets are walking in our yards. I simply think, and I've thought this from the beginning, that we are asking for problems for our small community to be created and compounded and to fester that can move from annoyances to actual physical injury that are lifelong and possibly death. If someone wants to raise chickens, there is plenty of space, more than double the space that we have in the city, in the county of Franklin County, that would allow for the raising of any numerous kinds of livestock. And lastly, I'll point out that one hen, it was reported by the University of Hawaii in a study, one hen will produce 130 pounds of manure in 1 year. If you have 5 chickens, that's 650 pounds of manure in 1 year produced in the backyard of someone in an urban setting. If 1% of the people in Frankfort, Kentucky decided to raise urban chickens at the limit of 4 or 5, that would create 178,750 pounds of waste added to our landfill. It would create 90 tons of waste added to our waste management system. We are asking for a problem that may not hurt a ton of people, but it will hurt someone, inevitably. Everywhere this happens, there's an outbreak. It may be 4 people. It may be 40 people. And when there is an outbreak, whether it's salmonella, whether it's histoplasmosis, whether it's avian bird flu, whatever it is, those are diseases that can be avoided if we simply don't enact this ordinance. I don't want to create an ordinance that has the effect of hurting one citizen, and I would feel terrible if a young child was injured with a disease like histoplasmosis, that I have a personal friend who has the disease, and losing her eyesight at 40 years old. And I would feel absolutely terrible as an elected official, and I would feel awful as a human. And for that reason, I won't support urban chickens in Frankfort. Thank you for my time.
Thank you, Commissioner Thompson. Do we have any other discussion or comments before we ask the staff to, I guess, make recommendations on, we're not voting on an ordinance tonight. I hope everyone knows that. This is a work session, and we're here to find out what our options are. Yes.
I just want to, I see that Eric stepped in the back, and I know in our last meeting, we had said that, was there any information that our staff has gathered on urban chickens that you would like to share at this time, or any other information?
Please approach.
Come, put you on the spot, I know. But is there anything you would like to share since our last conversation?
No other background info. I mean, I'm prepared if you all, if the group, at least 3 of you want to propose a directive, we can talk about the framework for how we might move forward on that. But as far as any additional just background information about some of the things that have been discussed tonight, I'm not going to jump into that debate. Urban chickens are a thing that a lot of places have. You can have varying, opinions about it, obviously. So I'm gonna try to remain Switzerland in this particular debate. And if the commission directs, then I can let you all know what I think would be the most appropriate way to move forward, and we can go from there.
I think that's what we're asking. Give us your recommendation on the best way to move forward here. That's what's on the agenda tonight.
Okay. If the commission wants to explore this and wants us to move forward, then I think with a topic like this, as we've already seen, that has quite a bit of public opinion on all sides of it, we obviously need to be open and transparent in how we work through crafting whatever ordinance we may create. There's multiple ways of doing that. I think probably the most appropriate and effective that I would suggest we use if we're going to move forward is to form an informal working group, perhaps with a lot of the folks in the room tonight and anyone else that wants to participate. Hopefully keep it small enough that we can be efficient and work through it, and then hold those meetings. We'd advertise them as public meetings, but the purpose is to do work, to have everybody that's interested in this topic, whether it's pro or con, to sit down at the table with us and start working on it, and eventually bring something back to you. Kind of similar to what some of you may remember when we discussed murals a couple of years ago. We formed a group and said, okay, everybody, we all care about this topic greatly. We have varying opinions. Now, if it's that important to you, come do the work with us, and we'll try to come up with a reasonable solution. So that'd be my suggestion. If the board as a body wants to move forward, that's what I would suggest we do. And
Commissioner Waters.
So my question is, I know you're in code enforcement, and that is a huge issue, as I've contacted you several times throughout the pandemic in regards to cars being in yards and grass being tall, which is very consuming of time, which is cost. What would you think doing this would enforce, who would enforce it? Would it be your office? Would it be a partnership with animal control or what have you? Who would enforce this? How much time do you think this enforcement would be? And if I had a problem with stench in my backyard and I complain, how long would it take for that to be corrected for the people who are having issues with enforcement?
all reasonable questions, and that's something we would have to work through that process. Is whose office does enforcement of this go through? Is it an activity that animal control focuses on, or my office? And then down to even those questions, like you mentioned, the smell. So one of the things that I'd want to explore is the communities that have done this and have used that as one of the things to create enforcement or to make folks do things. How are we defining that? How do we measure that kind of thing, if that's one of the measurements that we're going to use in those regs? So it goes back to those are all the reasonable questions that we have to figure out. So before we get to drafting anything, that would be the next step, is that we'd take the time to talk to some of these other communities, see how they set it up. Because the beauty here is that we don't have to recreate the wheel. A lot of other communities do this in varying ways. And so hopefully we can learn, as we try to do anytime we run into situations like this and we consider doing something new that we haven't done before but other folks have, we can learn from their mistakes and find out how much work it took, find out how they've set up their framework with what entities, and go from there. And that'll help give us a starting point to move forward with our group as we craft a solution to bring to you.
And so my follow-up to that is that with the odor, I spoke with Mr. Asafiza earlier in saying that I spoke with a couple of people in Lexington who have 4 chickens, and they had to buy more property because of the stench of their 4 chickens, and they moved the chickens about an acre back from their home, but on a good 90-degree day, it's something you just can't control. So with that being said, he did use the mash from Buffalo Trace, though it's not animals, it's something that maybe he doesn't want to smell or someone else may not want to smell. However, I don't want to smell the exhaust of someone's car either. So we could go on and try to compare that, but you were allowing chickens in. And so that is a huge concern for me and how we do handle that and what the enforcement would be. So that is a concern, I guess, for me and for others that continue to reach out to me.
I will say, just to share with you all, over the years at the county, we several years ago wrote some amended chicken laws to allow, to some degree, urban chickens. Not everywhere, but down to, I think the minimum was 3/4 of a lot. And that actually, in that case, went through the zoning update committee process, and it was part of a zoning ordinance requirement that amended those livestock rules to allow a limited number of chickens, similar to what other communities do. In my time dealing with code enforcement complaints at the county level, at the very least, even following those rules when we started to have some folks, and I don't think it was a terribly high number to be perfectly honest, having chickens on 3/4 of an acre, an acre and a half, in limited numbers, chickens probably created more livestock complaints than other animals, but I will say that 99% of the complaints we got could have been fixed with one of 2 things: a fence and not having so darn many chickens. Because usually the complaint wasn't driven about waste or smell or noise as much as somebody had a whole bunch of chickens and literally no enclosure at all, and so they ran all over roughshod. Otherwise, that like I said, that generated most of the complaints, as I recall, at that time. Not so much a question of how much property they were on. Once again, unless they had just an absolutely inappropriate amount of animals, on a piece of property. So.
And my last follow-up question would be, given the historic buff of our inner city circle and the history people that we have consistently trying to save everything and the historical value, will this ruin the platform or the identity or the prints of our historical area in our inner downtown?
That's a loaded question.
I'm just saying, the history people, I just want to make sure if they're asking for chickens and it ruins the historical footprint or anything of that, I would love to know that.
Of all the potential issues you might imagine, that doesn't strike me as the immediate problem that it would affect, the value of our unique architectural and historic assets downtown. But beyond that, I think I'll just leave that one alone.
Commissioner Unger?
I want to just start by thanking everyone for coming. I need to hear all the comments, and like Kyle said, that we have heard more about chickens than really anything in the past year, probably. But, I honestly wish we could vote on this tonight just to get it dealt with, but I am happy to have this public meeting and know that we can have more public meetings. So I would love to see that process get started with the chicken discussion. So I'm sure there's many here that would be happy to be involved. You've offered your services now for multiple commissions. So thank you, and Eric, I think it's a great idea. We need to get some meetings planned if that's what the board wishes, so.
I ask that we ask staff just to move forward with creating a small group and allowing public meeting for that to be in public meeting. And I would also just suggest that Mr. Hale, as well as Katie Doyle, who has been very consistent for the past 2.5 years since I've been serving and giving us information, doing diligent research and things of that nature that can already put us not behind the 8 ball. So I think we've gained some ground, but I think that those are 2 individuals that definitely would be, as well as maybe a representative from the Silver Lake area, maybe their HOA president, so that that person could be there as well. I think Kyle had a
And-
question, Mayor.
Commissioner Thompson?
Oh, sorry.
Mr. Cockley, sorry, I didn't get to ask you a question while you're over there, but just real quickly, do you have any suggestions of who should head this particular committee? And should it be a volunteer situation where folks sign up to do it, or that the commission appoint folks that should be involved, or let it be a free-for-all and have everybody that wants to be involved, show up for these meetings?
Right. So you know, the fear with these groups, obviously you don't want to end up with a room full of 60 people and then you can't get anything done. In my experience, usually though, once you get down to allowing some folks to self-select, we'll advertise it as a public meeting, but typically the most efficient way to do this is to keep it an informal committee. When we did this for the mural question, what I did was have people, frankly, we had one public meeting about it for everybody to kind of come together, because in that case it hadn't been discussed at a city commission meeting. So we essentially had a larger meeting where everybody came in and we let everybody go around the room and kind of have an airing of grievances, if you will, and kind of give their 2 cents. And at the end of the meeting, I put a piece of paper on the table and said, I want about 12 people. Please self-select and write your name and email down, and I'll contact you about the group. And we had that number change. Some meetings when we were working on those regs, we might have 8 people come, a nucleus of folks that remained interested enough to come to 4, 5, 6 meetings, whatever we ended up having. And occasionally a few more people would get interested and show up to a meeting and then not come to the next one. So the number of people seems to self-regulate usually, in my experience, when we do this. And we advertise the meetings as public, so the goal is not to turn anybody away and say, oh no, you weren't on the group the first, get-go. But the goal is to get a group of folks, preferably on all sides of the item, to sit down and actively take ownership over the process with staff while staff leads the process. As I mentioned, it's not a formal committee, so it's not that we need to have a chairperson or whatever. Staff can lead the discussion, start with drafts when we get to that point.
Who would be that staff person that would lead this?
It would appear to be me.
And Jordan.
Yeah. So good news is we're familiar with doing that because of what we do with planning stuff. We're familiar with having those conversations, working with people, and like I said, as long as we don't end up with a group that grows so large that you get inefficient and can't get things done, typically we can work through that. So we can kind of start that way. I know we've got contact information for some of the folks here, either from previous email contacts or others. Otherwise, I would just tell everybody that's interested to get a hold of me, and I can hand out cards before everybody leaves or whatever, and we can start generating that list of folks that think they're interested enough to come and do the work. And because that's what I'll repeat about it is, this isn't a passive situation where we're going to have meetings and I'm going to sit up here and tell everybody what's going on. They're going to come in and I'll hand them a draft and I'll say, get your pen out, we're working. So that we all have some sense of ownership and an opportunity to contribute to that, to get to something hopefully that we can all live with, if that's the direction the board wants to go.
All right,
Do
thank
you
you,
all have
Eric.
some expectation of time on this?
I guess enough time that, I'd like to,
July-
at the end of this,
July
have some kind of
vote,
draft ordinance that we could vote up or down.
Right.
Something that,
So the goal would be we'd do some background research to start with, talk to some other communities to prepare starting something, get our names of folks that we think are interested, and then the folks that we know want to participate, we can work with them to schedule a meeting when as many of them are available as possible. We'll advertise it. And then you continue working. So once again, to harken back to the mural issue, it'll take as long as it takes. But we can at that point earnestly start working on something, and the goal is to end up with a draft ordinance. You know, the group will work through it, we'll get it to a semi-finished product, go over it with Laura, and then ultimately have it back on an agenda for you all. And in the meantime, we can always, give you guys updates about how it's going, and, the outline we seem to be working with and that kind of thing.
Okay. And Commissioner Thompson?
Solicitor Ross, when we started talking about this way back, you had warned us, I think is the proper way of saying this, that if we create an ordinance in this manner, that there is actually a number of ordinances that are affected by this particular issue. So even if an ordinance is created, there's going to have to probably be multiple ordinances that are going to have to be amended or struck or all sorts of different things to make this a reality. Is that still your opinion?
That is still my opinion. We have looked at, we've already, have a foundation here where we've looked at some of our ordinances and gone over them. So there are ordinances related to animal control, related to noise, that would have to be amended, and we would have to go through all of those carefully to see where any issues that had to do with chickens might come into play. So it's possible that this could be something that would require amendment of several ordinances at least.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any other questions?
I
Commissioner
wanted to
Hunter?
ask Solicitor Ross, it is totally possible that an ordinance could say that neighborhood associations or HOAs would hold power over deciding. Is that anything you've seen?
I don't know that I've run across anything that leaves it up to the neighborhoods. I think that what I've seen so far is more comprehensive for a citywide allowance for that. So, and I don't know if Eric has seen something different.
So our enforcement capability based upon whatever ordinances we may allow does not, let me explain it this way. HOAs and their ability to control what happens in a neighborhood. Can you have a garage? Can you have a fence? Can you have chickens? Do you have to brick the house? Whatever, those HOAs in different places do. That is controlled by, it's a civil covenant, right? So it's tied to your deed, and that is up to the HOA to enforce that. We can choose to allow you to do whatever. That does not infringe upon the homeowners association's ability to say, no, we said no chickens. And then they're able to use their enforcement capability to take action in court or whatever they have an ability to do depending on that HOA, how they're structured and what the tools are in their toolbox. We don't enforce any of those things. We only enforce the ordinances. So if your HOA doesn't let you do something and your neighbor does it, and you call my office and you say, well, man, you're not supposed to have a detached garage in my neighborhood and this guy's putting one up, I'm going to tell you, well, yeah, we issued a permit because we don't have any ordinances that can tell me I cannot issue a permit for that. Does that make sense?
Gotcha.
But that will never infringe upon their ability to act on whatever that problem is in whatever manner they have available to them.
Sir?
But it's kind of a two.
Yeah, question.
You can allow it if you so choose, Mayor.
Is it,
Yes.
you don't enforce anything other than the ordinance here. So if an HOA has something that says you can't have livestock, but somebody in that subdivision puts livestock there in the subdivision, and the city ordinance says there's no, that's okay, then where does that leave the HOA?
That leaves the problem squarely on the shoulders of the HOA. And that's to my point, that if our,
It's legal, right?
right, then it's up to the HOA to enforce their own.
And the only way of doing that is through legal process.
That's correct.
You can't, people are not gonna respond to a letter saying, you gotta get rid of your problem.
That, as I understand it, that'd be the most effective way an HOA would have to deal with somebody that really wants to ignore them, yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And any other? Commissioner May, it's good. Thank you. Thank you. We may need you in a second. So.
I'll just hand
Okay. All right. Well, that handles that. We will have public comment or public meetings on this, and then we'll draft some kind of ordinance that we can vote up or down, as much time as you need on that. Okay. Next item on the discussion list is abandoned properties, and this also will require the efforts of Mr. Cockley and hopefully Mrs. Ross. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming tonight.
I believe Commissioner May was just raising his hand.
I'm sorry, I didn't. Commissioner May, I need to get. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
I've just got a few slides to help me begin our discussion about abandoned properties, kind of what they're, the peculiar situation that we find a lot of the properties that are abandoned in town are, and kind of why they're a blind spot, if you will, that typical code enforcement activity is frankly incapable of solving the problem generally. So abandoned properties, as we all know, what are the problems with this? Well, we lost tax revenue, we have public safety issues, sometimes you end up with squatters, then you end up, next thing you know, it's wintertime, somebody's trying to create heat in a house somewhere, bad things happen. And in addition to that, these are increased costs that the city ends up paying to try to initiate code enforcement actions, to file liens upon property owners that will likely never pay them, to mow grass perpetually on abandoned properties, and all these things cost taxpayers money. Speaking of the taxpayers, obviously for residents near these abandoned properties, you end up with decreasing property values, public safety issues, as I mentioned. Sometimes neighbors end up taking on maintenance issues because they get tired of having to wait for the city's enforcement process to happen, and they just take the darn lawnmower over and start mowing it themselves. And once again, all the other taxing districts and the school district that are losing tax revenue because we have delinquent owners, deceased owners, out-of-state owners who have abandoned properties, and even with the other methods we have to try to coerce folks into paying those property tax bill, for example, our abandoned urban property ordinance that we file that list every year, and all those properties that qualify are triple taxed, but there's really nothing useful about going through the exercise to triple tax a person that's deceased. You're fairly unlikely, in my experience, to get any of that tax revenue that you were missing. So, once again, just going through the city's costs that are derived from these sorts of properties. The abandoned urban property list I referenced, 74 properties this year were on my initial list. Many of those, which are what we refer to in my office as frequent flyers, they may get mowed any number of times over the course of the year. We spend $25,000 to $30,000 of tax dollars every year mowing other people's grass. In addition to $15,000 a year in new code enforcement liens filed, and then when you're talking about these properties, those are liens that are likely never going to be paid back, and if so, only because somebody managed to foreclose on it, and we get a piece of that. So again, the resident's dilemma: down property value, safety concerns, vermin, bugs, weeds, and then the other problem: how motivated am I to invest in my property when I'm next door to something like this? And obviously we want to motivate people to keep spending money, invest in their properties, and improving our housing stock. So, when Laura, Nancy, and I have talked about this for a couple of years, trying to figure out how to get at this piece of the problem, and the best way I know to explain it is to describe our housing stock in 3 different pieces. And our different tools that we have between code enforcement, between our our smaller grant programs for homeowners that we may not have funded this year, but I'm sure will come back at some point, that was very effective at dealing with some of these, but aren't very good at dealing with others. And so I think the program, as we may outline, that we can create out of this discussion this evening, I think is a way to get to one of these thirds that our other things don't do a good job of getting to. So your top third of the housing stock, these are the ones that we don't have to worry about. They're maintained, people take care of them, they continue to reinvest in the property, they're good. We need to support the folks that aren't in the top third. So the middle third, these are probably useful properties in varying conditions. People are probably doing a reasonable job of maintaining them because they're actually living in them. And the middle third is where all of the stuff we already do is going to be generally pretty good at dealing with it. You have a grant program to get that person that has some work they need to do on their older home and they just haven't gotten off, off dead center on it. Maybe they marginally can afford to do the work and they just keep not quite pulling the trigger because they don't want to spend the money. Our grant programs have been fantastic at dealing with those folks and getting people to just do some stuff maybe quicker than they would have otherwise, and go ahead and make those decisions. As is our typical code enforcement process on folks that might be a little bit less motivated than them, but they actually do have some kind of ability to make those changes. They need a nudge. And so code enforcement, grant programs, those things are doing a pretty good job of motivating the middle third to invest in their properties. The bottom third, this is the problem. You end up with homes owned by deceased people. They're in estates. They're owned by somebody out of state. They're vacant. The return on investment becomes a problem because they're in such poor shape that gap is too large. And most importantly, because of the ownership string of these properties, you have no way for the market to solve the problem because they never end up transferring. And that becomes the problem. We can send nasty letters and put public notice signs in the yard all day long, and you're never going to make a difference with that particular set of properties, as long as they're owned by whatever entity still owns them.
Can I ask a question about that?
Sure.
Before we move on. Do we actively file claims as third-party interested entities in estates for costs that we have incurred? So if a person,
estates?
yeah, so if a person dies, the house hasn't been transferred, it's still in the deceased person's name, but there is a probate action open. We have posted violations, and we have cut the grass, or there's other issues that we have fixed. Are we actively seeking reimbursement of those costs as a creditor to the estate?
We obviously filed liens associated with those costs. I don't know that we actively would participate.
No, the method that we have really for doing that is to go through the lien process. We also recover through the foreclosure process when people are delinquent on their taxes. So those are the two statutory methods that we have.
So my question is then, if we go through the lien process, are we actively negotiating with families and things of that nature when they try to close the estate?
No. The lien process really doesn't, I think, take the same course as the probate action and what's going on with that. So, and frankly, we don't, our lien, how many liens do we end up filing a year, Eric?
A lot.
A lot. And
every lien you
with
file
moderate success.
that has a low chance of being returned to you also costs money.
Yes.
So there's that thought process we go through lots of times. Well, property X, this is lien number 47 in 2 years we put on them. None of those are being paid back. Is it even worth the filing fee?
Right.
To spend more tax dollars to put a lien on a property that I'm probably never going to get back? And that's the struggle with these.
So something else you mentioned as a secondary issue is person A dies and the property never transfers. It languishes in the courts for 6, 7, 8 years. It's never transferred. we're filing liens, if we do file a lien against the estate, we really want somebody to be the owner so we can deal with that. Have we ever intervened as in a situation where we have attempted to force a closing of the estate or an accounting of the estate to kind of try to make that happen?
I don't think we've done exactly what you're talking about. We do get involved with a lot of these properties will become, tax delinquent as well. And
Right.
so we do have a pretty steady process of foreclosures and making sure we appear and that we are getting our money back in that particular method. But what you're referring to, I don't believe we have ever gone down that route or
Okay.
explored that route.
Okay. Just interested. Sorry. Thank
Sure.
you.
So we have the different categories of properties. Some things work for some of them, and some don't for others, as we've discussed. So once again, the bottom third dilemma: two things likely: the return on investment, the amount of money somebody's got to put to make the property useful, if they can get a hold of it. Does that math work? And the second and more likely the main culprit for why nothing occurs is property acquisition. How do you transfer the property? And so that is what we continually come back to. And so we mentioned foreclosure. And so that's the way we can place liens, and then we have an ability to initiate a foreclosure proceeding so that it'll transfer somehow. So
Do we ever take city action to acquire the property through?
well, that is the exact thing that we want to discuss with you guys
Okay.
this evening.
Okay. Sorry. Didn't mean to step
Because
on your.
yeah, because it in the almost 3 years I've been at the city now, me and Nancy and Laura have gone over this stuff, and we have constantly been looking for how do we figure out how to deal with this, and it always comes back to foreclosure. And so then the question is, well, foreclosure is not free, and once you foreclose, how do you guarantee something productive happens? If we spend $8,000 of taxpayer money to attempt to foreclose on a property, hoping that somebody more useful will choose to bid on that and then fix it, how do we know that's going to happen? And so that's a risk, particularly because the cost of foreclosure is going to be partially that significant because we don't have the resources in-house to spend the time to push all these foreclosures, so we end up having to pay outside legal counsel to help do all that paperwork. So the proposal, the outline, and this is modeled off a program active in Covington, is to fund a program where we can initiate foreclosures on properties we've identified, and have a specific criteria to identify the properties that would qualify into this. We can then identify what we can refer to as community developers that want to participate. Those folks will obviously have to be in good standing with the city, probably have some requirements about, a sound history of not having their own issues, and some demonstration that they're willing and able to complete a project. And then essentially, and just as I titled the slide matchmaking, we try to put together the property and an owner that's interested in doing it. And then essentially, we can move forward with foreclosure of a property and spending that money knowing that we have a potential agreement with a developer. And essentially what will happen is we can move on foreclosure, we can end up bidding on the property, purchase the property, enter into a development agreement with a developer who then will be held to the standard to, finish making the property productive again, and ensuring that the first dollars that the city invested in foreclosing on the property and then purchasing it are not wasted. And my argument would be that some of these that may be vacant and we may mow year after year after year, we may spend a couple $1,000s a year mowing that property. It would be much more productive in 1 year, in my estimation, to spend $10,000 or $15,000, make sure the property is now in hands of somebody that's doing something productive with it, back on the tax rolls, generating income, helping motivate our other folks to feel confident to invest their money in their properties in these neighborhoods, and move forward that way.
are laws with regard to foreclosure and public sales of foreclosed properties. And I'm wondering and maybe Eric's about to tell me this and I should be quiet, but is there an ethical issue there of matching with developers that are making business income from things that these decisions we're making?
Well, I think that is one of the questions that you're going to run into. Which properties, and that's why we do have the right to foreclose on these
Sure,
properties.
sure.
So we would be extraordinarily careful about which properties we were considering for the program. They would be ones that were on the abandoned property list, that were severely delinquent with code enforcement, that we had been unable to locate owners. We would look at all of these factors to see if these properties truly are abandoned, and that there isn't some, so neglected and abandoned that we do not believe there is any interest in the property. And we also have a process through this where we would make every attempt to notify any property owner that was out there to make sure that they were adequately informed and had the ability to step in and halt the process by paying their delinquent fees, their delinquent taxes, whatever it might be, before we ever got to the process of foreclosure.
So I guess my concern though is that next step after foreclosure, we've acquired this property, whether it's in the name of the city or the foundation or whatever we do, then we need to sell it. And what I don't want to do is get into a situation where we have local developers, and I'm not saying any local developers are like this, but that are receiving a benefit from the city because they are in, they're buddies with the city commissioner, or they're friends with, legal staff or anybody else, and they got a good gig going. They got some, this deal where these properties come in and they can get it cheap, and they know what they're going to do, and they'll probably have tax incentives, and I don't want to do that without the openness of allowing anyone that wants to do that. But if you do that openness where anybody can bid, then we lose that ability, like you said, like we want people to be able to finish the project and do things of that nature. So can we qualify? Are we allowed to qualify purchasers?
That is exactly what we would
And
do.
so, and those are all valid concerns that we've
Yes.
talked about, both how do you depoliticize and make sure it doesn't appear predatory, how you choose which properties are on the list for the program, for example. Do you let other folks bring those to you, or do you put together a group, whether it's staff, whether it's the city manager and the city solicitor and the planning director, that sit down and we create very specific criteria, hopefully to take politics out of it, to take out that kind of stuff. In addition, you make sure that, before you go to this step, that you've already exhausted every option you had other than that.
Yes.
You don't start this parallel to still working on an owner. You make sure, like, no, we've attempted, and it's clearly, not fruitful. Because those are all very valid things, and I think that's part of what our work needs to be if the commission wants to move forward. We have a broad outline of how we think this can work, and I think it has worked for at least one other community we know of. But the devil in the details about all those things are not insignificant. So that's kind of the part of the next step that we would take, and part of the reason we wanted to talk to you all today, to just have this discussion about what the challenge is with these, and the reasons, and also so that the public understands that there are a lot of reasons why we can't immediately affect change with some of these properties, and we need another tool. We need another tool, and frankly, if we create the tool, we're going to also come back and we're going to need money.
So, Eric, I know in 2019 we brought something like this up. We were interested. A couple of us went to KOC trainings, and there was a program that was ran through sort of KOC, or they did a presentation. And I think after all of what you're saying of going through the lines of not having an owner, and then it was like 90 days after that or something of that nature. It was a timeline, and after that 90 days it then would be turned over, as you said, to be able to be sold or something of that nature. It was successful in a couple of I can't remember the counties. I'm not sure. I can't remember, what was it? Covington. I think it was really successful in a couple of counties, and then I know COVID hit, so we really didn't get to dig too much into that. But I liked the presentation that they did. I liked the process. It, allows for a property to be okay. I also would like the fact that, I'd like for our developers and our people that are in Frankfort to have the opportunity to those properties before people outside of our community, if possible. I would like to keep that with developers here, across Frankfort that are residents of Frankfort, or people that like to get put into the community, to have those options before we open them up for people outside of our community.
Mayor?
Yes, Mr.
I was gonna say one of the, it's like being on Zoom. One of the biggest issue for us, for staff, and I know for you all, is that you get the phone calls of the properties that are, let's say in the third tier group, and that we try to explain to people, and I know Eric does, I do, you all do, that, there's a process we go through. So we're trying to expedite the process some way, shape, or form to get this moving where, if you live next to one of these things, that you feel like it's not hopeless. Because in the past, I feel like that process has taken, a year or 15 months or 2 years or 3 years, and we deal with some very frustrated people sometimes, trying to explain this. So that's why we're here tonight, to try to move this and expedite it, especially those ones in the bottom tier groups.
And thank you all. I think it's important that we fast track some of these. And I do have a couple of questions. In step 2, the city purchasing the property at the master commissioner's sale, are we in competition with other people that are trying to buy this or bid on these properties as well at that time?
I hope so.
And then if we see a qualified bidder that is
Right. Well,
there,
so
we
the
step
way
away.
we'd imagine that it would occur is that prior to initiating foreclosure and prior to ending up at that master commissioner sale, you've already identified you've got a property you're going to go after, and you've got a developer that's interested in acquiring it and being productive with it. And so what you end up doing is coming to an agreement about what your ceiling is for how much you're going to bid. The way Covington does it, they would then have the developer put that money in escrow. So if I'm the developer, I go to the city and I say, hey, I see this property's on your list. I'd love to get a hold of it. It's been sitting there rotting. Maybe my house is 1 block away, and I'm just tired of walking by this thing, and I think it's not that bad, and I can actually do something with it. And so you end up at some number that developer's willing to put in, that they think that, okay, if the city can fund the actual legal part of the foreclosure action, that they can put up that money in escrow, where the city would have it, and that's the money the city uses to bid. Now, if the city gets outbid by somebody that really wants it, sorry developer, but big win, looks like we pushed a foreclosure and somebody's gonna make it productive, let's go to the next one. So yeah, totally, and that would be a great problem to have, because it means the property really was viable and foreclosing was a very useful tactic, to get it back on the tax rolls and useful.
Go ahead.
And with that language, hypothetically, let's say Kyle is a developer and he came and purchased a property, right? And then all of a sudden there's another property and Kyle's interested in that too. Is there language we could put in there to say, no, you're only allowed 1 property at a time until that property is complete and sold? Like, I don't want to give you 8 properties and then it's going to take Kyle 5 years or whatever to get to those 8 properties, when we have myself or maybe Mr. Northcutt or someone else in here that may want a property. That you have to buy 1 property,
Demonstrate that you can
demonstrate
complete
that
it.
you can complete it and that it's sold in order
Yeah.
for you to purchase another one. Therefore, it doesn't look like there's not fair bidding, or that someone's coming in to buy up all these properties, one particular developer or what have you, that they would have to prove and have that sold before they can come back to us to say, I'm ready to purchase another
Well, I
one.
think that's a great idea. You get one at a time and demonstrate that you can complete it. And as part of that too, as qualifying for a developer, we want you to demonstrate that you have the financial ability to do what you say you're going to do.
Right.
And then obviously we'd end up, to protect the city's and the taxpayers' interests, as part of that development agreement, likely some deed restrictions when it transfers to these people, so that if failure occurs on their end, we have a method to claw back
Right.
and protect our investment.
Can I ask another question? Can we, because it would be assumed that we would be fronting the money for the foreclosure. Can we, in the contract to transfer to the developer, can we recoup that money upon the sale? Is there any restriction that allows us to say we'd like 1% of the sale price to recover our $1,500 or
Anything
$2,000?
over.
I think we can
Yeah.
create it how we can create the framework.
I just didn't know if there was a legal restriction with regard to anything like this. Which leads to my other question is, are we allowed to use only city funds, or can we have private citizens who are investing to assist in this program to start and maybe fund the foundation? Is that allowed?
Honestly, I think that it is. I think that this is a creative method. It is not governed. There are statutes that apply, obviously, with foreclosures, but it is not a process that's set forth in statute. It's one that cities have creatively developed on their own and seen success with. So I think that we have lots of opportunities to structure it in the way that makes the most sense for us and is the most financially responsible and viable. So I definitely think we can look at
And
that.
it works with our local market, which isn't
Yeah.
going to be the same as
Yes.
everybody
Right.
else.
Right.
So how we frame the developer's contribution versus the city's contribution and what we may or may not get back out of that investment is going to have to be unique to us, to the
Well-
market realities that we have that may not be the same as Covington.
And normally
Yeah.
they'd be paying something to a realtor or someone to purchase these properties anyway, so they probably have that built into their idea of, what their costs are. What I don't want to do is I don't want to create the illusion that there is an unethical relationship between us and, local developers who are all good people, but, they've made $100,000 off the city, project over the last 10 years, and I don't want that image either. And I don't want to do anything that the city would essentially maybe not be unethical, but kind of look shady. And I want to make sure we do everything on the up and up. So if we're allowed to do that to recoup our money, then I'm all for it. If we can't do that because of some governmental restriction, that I don't want to, obviously don't want to do that, but I want to do what we can to recoup the money so that we're not constantly pouring money into this. I know we're going to get taxes and things, some benefits from this, and some liens paid off.
Yeah.
But the idea of funding this, knowing that we're going to recoup the money on the back end, is much more appealing, especially if it's all a risk. So
And I think that's why it's so important as we define the process.
right.
How are properties identified? Who places them on the list? And
Right.
how clear we are that everyone can see transparently what those standards are, and it either meets it or doesn't. And same for the folks that want to participate with us, because those details matter.
Yeah.
For all of those reasons, and also so that folks don't feel like they've been, subjectively preyed on by the city or developers who just wanted to get their property. Because at the end of the day, we're talking about foreclosure and forcing the change in possession of somebody's property, and that's not a little thing.
No, it's not.
So
And it's not popular.
Will we be foreclosing on anything we don't have a lien on, or do we have? to
I
have
don't
a lien?
believe we can
Okay.
foreclose on anything we don't
So
have.
do we have an idea of how many liens we have out there? What's accounts receivable, if you will?
Do you know how many properties we have liens on?
So many.
We could send Nancy down that
Yeah.
list, but
We could
It's
get
all-
the
I
data.
mean, just
It's
curious.
a
I
lot.
mean, we'll get it, but that
we,
is another argument to fast track some of these and get some of our money back. Okay. Any other?
Is-
yeah.
Yeah, out of the 74 properties, are these residential or are these commercial? Do you know the breakdown of those? Like, is the old YMCA one of these properties?
yes. My abandoned urban properties list is largely residential. It's more residential than commercial. There are commercial properties. You referenced one. When we've talked about this program, I'll be honest, the properties I'm thinking of that I see in my head are largely residential, but there's no reason they would only be residential.
Okay.
But I just know the examples that I think of that we deal with tend to largely be residential properties, and certainly the ones that generate constant maintenance, like mowing and things, are going to largely be residential properties.
Do we
But-
currently have any liens on the old Y?
I don't know that I'm at liberty to.
Okay, all right. Are they in litigation?
We are still in
Okay.
litigation.
I'll leave that to Laura.
All right, okay,
Sorry, I didn't
Thank
mean to
you.
open
No.
that door. That's just a huge pain in
yeah.
Let's
Sorry.
see. Well, any other slides?
I
that-
think
is
we've
that the
about,
gist
we've
of
about
it?
gotten through. Just any other questions? And that's all I got. We just wanted to kind of share that with you all, where we think we want to go, and then get direction from you all if you want, and we can hopefully then try to prioritize some of our time, particularly Laura's time, because this is going to be quite a bit of
Yeah.
thought involved, time-consuming work for her in particular. You know, I can do a lot of the abstract work the creative part we can do together, but at some point it becomes something that's going to take a great deal of her time
Yeah.
to make sure that we do it right. So
And that's another reason I think we should recoup some of our money on that back end, definitely. That's good.
We're going to need the property put in use, and one thing
Yeah.
we could do on the developers, it's like a rotation schedule, just like I think if you apply for a loan, the appraisals, I think it's there's a queue of appraisers that they just have to go in order, and that's what we could do here too. So possibilities are there are many.
There are many.
We'll have to give you extra time, Laura, to Solicitor Ross. Thank you all. Now, this is great, and I think without any objections, we'll direct staff to move forward with this, and hopefully we can get something in place pretty soon.
No, I definitely support it.
And if I may, Mayor, if we run into, as we get further into this program, if we run into roadblocks, we find out that, other communities have faced major issues or something comes up, we'll of course be very sensitive to that and aware of those things and make sure that we are not bringing you a program that lends itself to legal challenges.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cochran. All right. And next discussion item, quadricycles and alcohol fees.
I support it. We could have our city commission meeting around one.
Which one?
All of them.
Who would like to begin on this?
I'm happy to.
Okay, Solicitor
start
Ross.
this. So this is something that we've received some requests for. We've done some research into it. If for anyone who doesn't know what a quadricycle is, it is basically, they're referred to sometimes as pedal wagons, and multi-passenger pedal-operated vehicles that are used for tour purposes, usually also involve alcohol consumption. If a community, there's a fairly recent law that allows for quadricycles. If a community wants to do that and they want them to permit alcohol to be consumed on the quadricycles, there's a specific statute that has to be followed, lots of boxes that have to be checked regarding standards and how the permits are issued. So we would be one of only a handful of cities that have done anything like this. We've looked at ordinances from Lexington, Louisville, maybe one or two other places, and that's about it. We've worked with Eric, we've worked with Chief Adams, everybody that we can think of on city staff to bring some of these issues to the forefront and make sure that we're crafting an ordinance that makes sense for our community. And what you have in front of you is that ordinance. We are not asking for a first reading tonight. We wanted to make sure you all had a chance to review the ordinance and ask any questions, ask for any revisions. I can tell you one off the bat. Right now, we have the hours of operation are those during which businesses may remain open and sell alcoholic beverages. We would like to actually change that to 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. Just something simple and an across-the-board rule. So, and the alcohol fee ordinance that accompanies this is necessary because we would have to create the authorized public consumption license. And while we were doing that, we had a few other licenses that were not in compliance with state law that we wanted to make sure reflected the statute.
Is this, and I know I brought it up before, is this just for land purpose only, or is this for river as well? I know some communities are now, implementing river boats as well that are the same way as pedaling. So would this only be on land and road, or are we gonna consider maybe possibly river? Or do we need to bring that up in another ordinance later on if that was?
This one is land-based
Okay.
because of the statute that governs it. Quadricycle's defined by state statute.
Okay.
But, I'm happy to, I'm not aware yet of the statutes that govern. I'm guessing there must be something out there that governs the water-based ones, but we can certainly look into that.
Yeah.
KDFWR,
KDFW.
Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife patrols the water, and I'm sure they've got
Yeah.
open container and all that kind of stuff on the water, so, the one thing that everybody needs to look at for sure is the map, to understand the map and how we got there and what the questions were and as far as it goes, so.
And I did have one question on the map, but Kyle, you had a question before me?
I'll let you ask that question because it's gonna lead into one of my questions.
Okay, so the one issue that I saw, is just some of the dead ends on, I'm not sure, I've never ridden one, but they look like they could be an issue to turn.
Yes.
Not to say that they won't be, but is there at each dead end a good area to turn? And one area that concerns me is the hill on Olive Street, that comes up, I guess, right beside,
Whitaker Bank.
yeah, and so that is not connecting there. So if they're right here at Whitaker Bank and the other bank here, that is a one-way street there, is why I'm assuming that that does not connect for them to take that left-hand turn there. But from the other street, I just don't see, on the right side, I just see that it's dead end and they can't really go anywhere, and it's a lot of turning around. And is that safe for the turning arounds at the end of Olive Street and at the end of West Broadway Street? And do we need to make it only a one-way up and street so that can link back around to keep that traffic flowing there? I'm not sure why that was not connected there to make sure it wasn't a left-hand turn, but you could do a right-hand turn there. Could someone get me to understand that? I know it's a one-way street, but could we not connect that?
Part of the issue, and I believe the city manager will speak to this as well, but part of the issue that we face in Frankfort that's unique to Frankfort in a lot of ways is that we are segmented by a number of state roads.
Okay.
And we do not have the ability, we don't have the jurisdiction to authorize quadricycles on the state roads. And because we have so many, that really does limit our pathways. And so, we haven't spoken to any quadricycle owners, businesses. I would assume they would know whether or not they could operate under these circumstances and whether it was feasible. But regardless, we don't have the ability to extend it. Some of those would make so much sense if we could do that, but unfortunately we don't.
Yeah, we would have connected the yellow lines if we'd had the ability. And Commissioner, I didn't know what a quadricycle was, to be honest with you, so when you're talking about riding them or turning them around, I have no clue,
Oh, yeah.
so.
Well, in that case, in giving Broadway, if we were, it is okay to cross Ann Street and stay on Broadway, but to cross, even though we are crossing that state road, is it safe to do that? And we do allow that. I do see it is going over Ann.
Isn't that right, Chief? That we could cross state highways at marked
At
crossings?
Okay.
At marked crossings, so.
Commissioner Thompson?
My question is, who will be enforcing, whether the quadricycle driver has an active operating permit? What would cause such a stop? Are there other road and traffic laws that deal specifically with this issue, or is it a vehicle, and so they have to follow those rules of law? And I guess my question is, there's a lot of things that we'd have to figure out with the local police. It would be a new issue, but I'm just wondering, I mean, if you pull somebody over and they don't have a valid permit, are they gonna have to carry that permit with them all the time? And then is that a
Each cycle has its own permit.
Right.
It has to be on the vehicle.
Okay.
To statute. And
Yes, that's right.
yeah, so and I would foresee that the only reason we would be pulling somebody over is if there was maybe some sort of accident, or
Yeah.
they do find themselves on a street they're not allowed to be on.
Is a violation of this a traffic case or a misdemeanor case for violation of not having a permit or not abiding by local traffic laws?
The ordinance itself, so if it's a violation of this particular ordinance, it's going to be a violation rather than a misdemeanor. So they can be fined, I think we put not less than 20 nor more than 500 for each offense. We also put in that they are subject to the parking regulations, all of our regulations that they would also have to comply with within the City of Frankfort ordinances. So they could be cited under those ordinances as well.
Have we discussed, obviously, Chief knows a little bit about this, but has anybody discussed this with the Honorable Rick Sparks and his traffic? It would probably be the Honorable Chris Broadus who would do it because he handles traffic cases, but has anybody talked to them about the prosecution of these violations and things of that nature?
We have not spoken with the county attorney on the issue, but certainly that's a great idea to reach out and see if they foresee any particular problems.
I did,
Oh.
just in the conversation, did bring it that he thought it was a great idea.
Okay.
He didn't go into enforcement, he didn't talk about all of that, but he did like the idea.
That was Rick, I'm sure.
Yeah, that
right?
was Rick. I
Yeah.
was not here. So,
I'd have a hard time believing Chris Broadus is like, that's a great idea. But
My question is, and I'm reading through, I think it's a great idea, and I haven't read in detail every moment of it, but is this more for businesses to provide the quadrant rather than something
Yes.
personal? So that means going back to, like you said, the license and the insurance that will be on, the permit would be on that in the business's name. So they
Yes.
would be responsible for all entities. And have we also discussed the loading? So let's say Goodwood gets one and has Goodwood's name on it. What is that loading? What is that loading for, to get on? Will they have to be in a parking space? Does it fit a car parking space? And will that, the loading on and off? I know I've seen them a lot, in other cities, but I've not seen, people get on and off. And is it safety in traffic passing?
so each quadricycle will have a designated approved route, and it'll be approved by us.
Okay.
And it will have loading zones, drop-off zones, where they're allowed to pull over and let people on and off at. It's very specific.
Okay.
so they won't be taking up fire lanes or anything like that.
No.
And staying in the middle of the
Yeah.
road and,
Designated
Blocking
parking
traffic.
lot or
got you. Okay.
And what's the maximum number of licenses we're going to allow?
We have not set a
Yeah.
maximum number of licenses. We frankly don't anticipate that there will be a large number of quadricycle businesses coming in. So we really haven't set a maximum. That's certainly something that we could add to the ordinance, especially if we start to see that this is becoming very popular. We could always, amend the ordinance.
Give ourselves some flexibility.
Right.
Because they have to go through a process to get the license, whatnot, and if we see a large, a rush, and then Chief Adams says, man, there are too many down there, then we limit it to 5 or something like that,
Right.
so.
Yes, Commissioner White.
My other question would be, so with this, it is a drinking mobile bipedal. So hypothetically, I know because we've had, a great conversation about these go-karts or golf carts and stuff downtown. So you would have to have a liquor license in order to bring one of these bikes in town. Are we doing the liquor license only? So it's not, you bring your own quad and you're just biking around town to be biking around town.
No,
These are
absolutely
drinking
not.
mobiles, and that you have to purchase a liquor license
Yes.
and be
They are
permitted.
they are pretty strictly regulated by
Okay.
statute. So the operators have to meet certain training requirements, go through meet all of the state and local licensing
Okay.
requirements for alcohol,
Have to
for
be inspected by.
inspections.
Okay.
Yes, they go through a really involved process, much more involved than than many other things to be able to operate one of these quadricycles.
And you don't just rent it. There's a business owner or employee of the business that actually is driving,
Right.
operating.
Right, we're just paddling for fun, thinking we're doing something, but it's
Doing
really,
something, yeah. Working off whatever you're drinking.
I look forward when you're off and we can.
Any other discussion on this? Are we missing anything?
I don't believe you are. My question for you all would just be whether or not you want to move forward with the first reading. Okay.
Yeah.
I think so, I think it's all covered, and I'd also like to see about the water addition, but I definitely would like to move on. I don't want to postpone this for the water. We can always add that later, so.
That can be separate. We could definitely look into
Right.
it.
Yeah.
All right. We will look forward to that. And the next item on the agenda, discussion of a joint meeting with the Franklin County Fiscal Court. Yes, Commissioner Walters.
I've been wanting to do this for a while. I know, there's been other magistrates that have wanted this also. I know I've spoken with, Magistrate Tracy and Magistrate Mueller, several times. I know we've brought it up, I've brought it up in other meetings. I just think that we need, even though there's two different governments here, city and county, we need to communicate more, definitely on some of the bigger items where we can partner, Mayor, and just be on one accord, whether that's a couple of times a year or quarterly or whatever our BOC thinks is feasible and what the county thinks is feasible. I think this is something that we need to implement and know what those days are in advance as our city clerk sets our dates and gets those out for us every year at the beginning of the year. We could go ahead and have her, work with the county to go ahead and set those, whatever it is, 3 dates or whatever, how many ever dates we want within that year, so we know county and city will be available. I spoke with City Manager Russell in regards to this as well, and I sort of agreed that it should not just be an open meeting on what have you, but when we do go in these meetings, that the county and the city have 1, 2, 3 items that we're going to discuss or talk about. So it's not an elongated sort of throw up meeting, but a productive meeting, both for the city and the county. I think this will help us with our working relationships, and we know what they're doing, they know what we're doing, and we know where we can do in-kind donations, they can do in-kind donations and be able to partner. So I think this is a great idea, but I also would like to hear what the other commissioners and mayor, what you guys think as well.
Commissioner Thompson.
I have, thank you for recognizing me. I have openly stated that I believe we need to have joint meetings between the City Commission and the Franklin County Fiscal Court. And I'll lay out why I believe those meetings need to happen. I agree they need to happen on a regular basis, much more than the last 18 months, which has been 0. We have a number of economic development and issues and initiatives that are intrinsically linked between the city and county governments. These issues and initiatives include, but are not limited to, the development of parcels B and C, the development of Lakeview Park, which will inevitably involve the city. Likely, we have several other capital projects that have already been discussed and are currently considered capital projects or future projects on the horizon, and as we see the budget in the next few weeks, we will see some of those. Many of these we should absolutely discuss with the Franklin County Fiscal Court on a regular basis, as we need to have joint decisions that are being made and joint directions that are being given. And finally, I believe we should discuss and possibly take action to restructure and to rearrange and reorganize our economic development entities currently driving our future growth plans and directives. In addition to these discussions, not just dealing with economic issues, we should and these will likely lead to discussions of community parks needs and coordination between the two government entities, perhaps waste management and recycling programs, and needs of those programs, and a number of other things that are either tangentially related to these issues or may be independent and single issues that the government should discuss as they affect all of the members of Frankfort and Franklin County as residents. I think we have gone too long as a small community that is governed by two separate entities that are doing their own thing things and not communicating with each other how each organization can work together. I know there has been a reason for those organizations not working together very well in the past. And I think that needs to change if we want true growth in this town. The communities surrounding us, Shelbyville, Scott County, Woodford County, they all have organizations and directives to assist in the economic development of the community, which in turn add to the growth of those communities, something that we haven't seen a ton of over the last 40 years. And just in closing, I happened to watch the fiscal court meeting of last week, and there was a discussion about whether our phone calls and in-person meetings and the such with the fiscal court magistrates was a violation of an Open Meetings Act. As someone who is very involved in the open meetings laws, I thought that the legal advice and statements that were made in that particular meeting were completely off base. I think they were meritless. We are two completely different organizations. You cannot have a rolling quorum if I myself talk to a magistrate that I have grown up with my entire life, and we just happen to discuss not only our children and how their sports events are going, but also what can we do about the development issues in this town. And I think that was incorrect that was said, and I personally was offended that we were accused of doing something that we clearly didn't do. And I think that those discussions have continued to happen since that meeting and will continue to happen. And I think they're necessary. And I want to make sure that everyone understands that we have the right to talk to those entities. They are not secret entities that cannot cross those lines. And I want to make sure that these discussions and plans and things that we all want to see happen are brought to the light of day, and that we have these joint meetings regularly and discuss the issues that will inevitably allow this community to grow. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other discussion, Commissioner Unger?
I did have one question. When was the last time we had a joint meeting? I recall one about
Was it last?
the parcels.
It was before the pandemic.
It was February.
February, I think.
Yeah,
February, right before the pandemic, I believe.
Right before the pandemic.
That's right, yeah. I'm in support of it. I know that there are plenty of discussions that could be had. I think we just need to limit, what those topics are. And what we could partner on. I'm okay to talk about it and schedule something if that's what the board wishes.
And I'll say, we do have, I agree, we do need to periodically get together and make sure we're all on the same page. But I should point out also, we do have two separate governments, and I guess theoretically we could talk about everything under the sun, but they have their own government, we have our own government. But I do think periodically it may make sense to sit down and make sure we're not, just make sure we're on the same page with various things. I guess on this particular, let's say the first joint meeting that we have, I'd like to keep this the agenda narrow, the focus. I think that we should do that. And correct me if I'm wrong, but do we need an action or a vote, or can we just call that? I work with the judge to we work out a date. I think
You can do that. You and the judge can both call the meetings. It will need to be a joint call where it's coordinated as a special meeting.
Can we?
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Mayor. Is there a way that maybe a presentation at one of their meetings could happen, because obviously we've been trying to work with the judge forever to get a meeting and it's just not happened. So I'm not saying that you can't do your job, Mayor, but obviously it's been a roadblock on the county side. And, you know, the judge does a lot of times block what is going on with magistrates, and the magistrates want things and it doesn't get past him. And I've actually spoke with the judge myself on having a joint meeting, and you see that it's gone nowhere. So, you know, I think that it should be something that is brought to their meeting. Maybe the mayor can take it and put it at a meeting or something. I just, you know, I mean, I would hope that we're talking about it publicly. Maybe the judge would then, I don't know, express his, you know, opinions on it, or make it happen. But it has been a roadblock, and so we can't look over that. And I don't want to set our mayor up to hit another roadblock when I've experienced it over the past couple of years. And, you know, I just want to make sure that our mayor is successful in talking with the county and getting a meeting set up. And I think that he would be more successful if he spoke to the complete board, the complete court, rather than just the judge. But that's my opinion.
Oh, I'm not on Zoom.
No, go ahead.
Here, I'll poke you.
Mr. Russ.
So with having a conversation with the judge, I feel like that the mayor can approach him, they can probably set a date. And I agree that what we spoke about, Commissioner, is the agenda needs to be very limited so we don't get off track. So if there are 2 things or 3 things is all that we want on the agenda, then so be it. Have those conversations. And the other thing is that regardless whether it happens here, it happens in fiscal court, wherever it is, then the presiding officer, either the mayor or the judge, will preside over that meeting. So I think that the mayor can go to the judge. I know the judge is on vacation. I think the judge is open to those considerations.
Okay, I mean, I would be open for that.
And time frame, I was hoping we would not do anything before we pass the budget, and we have, I'd like to get through June.
No, I think that's a good idea of getting those things off, but I also,
So that puts us into July then.
yeah, I think it's something that just needs to be done, but I definitely take what he's saying in consideration, that we want to make sure we get through past the budget and
Yes.
move through that and get moving in the right direction, trying to get some things off of our plates before everything opens back up, and moving forward.
In
And
July.
perhaps having a city manager decision on that
Yes.
point too.
And it would just be good, I think, in our meetings, Mayor, that, you know, some of our MOAs that, that we have with them, you know, like with our fire department, and some of the crossing overs that we do already have with the county, for us and yourself, for us to understand and see how those relationships are working. And just getting updates on those during those meetings as well.
That's something we should, you know, think about those things we want to talk about, economic development, any other.
Can we submit those to the mayor and city manager and Solicitor Ross over the next week, and then when the judge gets back, that maybe we can have a list of things and then go from there? I think there are obviously some things that have to be on that list, and then if we can't get them on that one, then we'll get them the next go around. I will say, knowing what happened in the fiscal court meeting, there was a they were going to try to take an action to vote on whether to have a joint meeting. When the person who was going to make the vote said, "I've talked to some folks on the city commission; they feel the same way." County Attorney Sparks became upset and said that he felt that was a violation of the Open Meetings Act, and then the judge executive kind of shut down the ability to have that vote. The reason that I asked for this to be on as an action item is because I don't have any doubt that, Mayor, you can go over and talk to the judge executive. I personally wanted the power of a action by the city commission saying we want to have a meeting, and you know, my hope was that the fiscal court would do the same thing, and then, you know, at that point it's just coordination. But because of what happened last week, I think that maybe that sends an even stronger view. Now, I understand Solicitor Ross's statement with regard to that. I agree, and I don't have any problems, but you know, that's why I asked for it to be an action item. I still think it would be a whole little bit more water if we did take an action item. But if Mayor, you think you can handle it and we can get a meeting without anything like that, then I'm okay.
I think so, and I have, I'd have no problem with it being an action item if you wanted to take a vote. I'm trying to keep the work sessions, and the
Absolutely.
regular meetings,
Yep,
regular
absolutely.
voting sessions, so. But, I'll leave that up to you all. I think, we can see on this and aim for July and try to schedule something.
I think if we could have a meeting for after July would be great, and maybe by the time we have the next voting meeting, that we have a date, and if we don't have a date, then maybe we can then move forward with an action item asking for us to meet, approve that on our board, and then continue on if we can't get a date by then.
And I get the feeling that some of the things you all are talking about, Mayor, the magistrates have the same concerns. So if everybody submits a list from both sides, I'm sure there are going to be items on there that are on both lists, and we can pick that, makes it a no-brainer on which ones that we want to have a conversation over, so.
And what's more pertinent in
Yeah,
all
I
of those
feel like that's
lists.
an easy
Yeah.
one.
Okay. Everybody feel good about that?
I
Yes, sir.
do.
All right.
Action item.
And now to action items.
All right, city manager.
How are we doing, everyone? Everybody good?
Okay.
Okay. Let's start.
Oh, there's Rebecca.
Okay,
Call in the
certificates.
pizzas for Da Vinci.
Number 5, certificates of local approval and letters of support for the Simon House, Campbell Street Shelter, and Main Street Shelter, and a letter of support for the Franklin County Women's and Family Shelter. Mrs. Rebecca Hall. Thank you.
These are just certificates of local support and letters of support that these organizations are required to get from the city to put in their applications. And I apologize for not having it on the last voting meeting, but the applications didn't come out till like the 1st of June. So that's why they're on this work session. But that's all they are, is just saying that we support, I believe it's the 2 locations of the Simon House and then the Franklin County Women's Shelter.
And these are normal grants that we do all the time.
We don't, they're applying for
They
them, we're
apply
just
for
showing
them.
our support.
That is correct. Yeah.
Motion to approve.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say no. Okay,
Thank you.
motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Hall.
I forgot Kelly was up there on the TV.
He said aye.
He said, "Aye."
I'll get you some next. Okay, next action item, the Charles T. Mitchell contract extension for the city audit. I'll ask Ms. Boyd.
Good evening.
Hi,
Hello.
welcome back.
Thank you. We requested Charles T. Mitchell to do our audit again, complete our audit again. They've been our auditor for several years, and they've agreed to an extension, so you guys agree. It is included in the budget. $27,000 is included in the city commission's department budget, and the other 10 is included in the sewer department's budget. So, if you can approve it, that'd be great.
Motion to approve.
Okay. We have a motion and we have a second. Any discussion on this? I forgot to ask last time. Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Say no. Okay, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
You want me to poke you?
Controversial. Okay, next item is the soccer memorandums of agreement. And we have Mr. Sean Pickens in attendance.
Good evening.
Good
Good
evening.
evening.
I'm here to, you all have seen them. I think I've spoken to several of you about them. They're pretty clear cut. I know Laura worked on them and put them together. Long story short, I mean, Field 1 is Frankfort High, pretty much. Field 3 is TFCA, pretty much. And then the second field that has lights and turf, not turf, but turf grass, is a shared use field. So there's equal use there. Basically, Field 2 will obviously be used more by Frankfort High because they have more teams. Okay, TFCA's soccer program is considerably smaller than Frankfort High's, but this at least gives TFCA a chance to have a night soccer game once or twice a week if they so need to. They told me they really don't anticipate many night games at all, but and that they would live with a field with no lights. They're just happy to have a field. But in this agreement, this does allow them, if by chance we get later into the season or early into spring, they do have the possibility of having a lighted field for evening games. So.
Well, I appreciate your work on this.
Yes.
And working with both groups.
Yes, very
and
much.
through.
Met extensively with
Yeah.
Houston Barber in person a couple of times, and we also met with Carrie Beth from TFCA, and we feel like we're on mutually good playing fields, no pun intended. And I feel, and again, this is a 1-year agreement, so we'll come back at this in a year from now, and we'll monitor it. We'll be in touch with both sides. You know, if everybody plays nice and things go smooth, then we'll come back to you guys and make little tweaks if we have to. If not, we'll either make it a 3-year agreement or a 5-year agreement or keep it at 1. We'll discuss all that when we get to that point. So,
Can I ask a question about the language in here?
Sure.
It talks about, TFCA and Frankfort Independent will submit their practices and games to the city 30 days before the start of the games. Then in number 6, it says the fields may be used by multiple teams. The practice and game schedules must be coordinated by the respective team's athletic directors and head coaches. And then if there's any dispute or major scheduling conflict, then the city gets involved.
right.
Is there any reason that we gave away that ability to be the arbiter of who gets of scheduling the fields?
If we got down in the weeds of a lot of that pertains to scheduling, you know, when games are going to happen, what nights games are going to happen, you know, if they're
Yeah.
home or away, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I don't want to get into
Yeah.
you calling Paris and
Right,
figuring
right,
out
right.
what my concern is. If TFCA's girls coach, if they have a girls team, is concerned about practice time, and he's got to call the athletic director for Frankfort Independent, or his athletic director has to call Frankfort Independent and make sure that's okay, and then we're 24 hours away from whenever that schedule pops up, because sometimes schedules change. I'm afraid. I'm just afraid of what happens if there's a no, or it wasn't coordinated in time, or
Then we step in as the Parks Department and make that decision.
okay.
If there's some type of a conflict between, and they say, no, I'm sorry, you can't use the field tonight, and if we come in, then we'll say, yes, they can, or no, they can't, and try to arbitrate that the best we can.
Is there a grievance policy that is set up to where, hey, we went to Frankfort Independent, they said no. Hey, we went to TFCA, they said no, and we need help. Are they just going to email you and say, hey, we have
Yes.
a problem?
Yes.
Okay.
I will be the first contact that they make.
Okay.
Especially in this first year.
Sure, I understand.
And I guess by the number of conversations that he has to have between those two, we'll go back and revisit this next year and
Yeah.
determine what language to put in.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. We're definitely going to use this first year as a learning curve, kind of see how it goes.
I just didn't want to give one school or the other the ability to, carte blanche say, no, you're not going to.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, there's going to have to be some good communication between the two, and they're going to have to get along. And there's going to be a few conflicts here and there, but we're hoping they can work those out between each other. But if they can't, we will hopefully keep a close enough ear to things that we'll have some knowledge of maybe the problem before it comes up. We're hoping. We'll kind of see. We'll stay in close touch with them. But if it comes down to where they just cannot totally agree, then we'll just have to step in and make the best choice that we can and move on from that.
And Sean, I will say, you have done a great job on this particular issue. It has taken up a lot of your time, I know.
Well,
Tommy-
Laura did a lot of work too.
Yeah,
So I can't take it all.
Tommy, I know you did a great job. I feel like I've been in more meetings about this than even chickens.
Oh, God.
And I am thankful that Frankfort Independent and TFCA were able to at least work this out for now. And I really genuinely am thankful for all the work you guys put into it.
And just one little side note, we've in-house in the Parks Department, I've initiated a new policy, and I've talked to a couple of you about it, just to try to keep this kind of a surprise deal from happening again. So say somebody else wants to come in to Capitol View and wants to do a similar MOA on a field for soccer or lacrosse on a soccer field or whatever the case might be. There's now an in-writing process and a somewhat short application process that they have to start. There's timelines, there's guidelines to follow. Solicitor Ross reviewed that and helped me craft that. And that's an internal parks policy that we have to keep it. The key part of the policy is the timeline to give it at least 4 months before any activity can even begin. So that at least gives a chance for our Parks Advisory Board, for you guys, for city manager and city solicitor to be able to see all that. But really the key part is that if somebody has a current MOA, in this example, like right now, if you approve this contract, TFCA and Frankfort High will have an MOA in Frankfort High. If somebody else comes in, the key part of that policy is whoever currently has an MOA, they must be contacted in writing, and you have to receive an official response from whoever has signed the document. So that'll be Houston Barber or Carrie Beth. They will have to be contacted at least 4 months ahead of time saying, hey, somebody else is interested in an MOA at the same facility that you're at. And we wanted to bring you up to speed. Here's what they're wanting. You are invited to any conversations or meetings that we're going to have about that. So they're in the loop from the very beginning to hopefully avoid these entities not realizing what's happening up ahead of time. So,
I'm still raising my hand. I got one question for you. So, in conversations with Dr. Barber in the independent schools, they have, it was like about 5 teams right now, and then I don't know how many teams the Christian Academy has, but what is sort of our max of how many teams or schools can actually use all these fields at once?
That's kind of if we don't have a rainy year, we could have several teams down there. But if we have a wet, rainy year, which is more likely the case, we're probably, when you factor in practices, because now Frankfort High is pretty much moving all of their practices to Capitol View. So if it's a normal wet season, we've probably reached our capacity now.
And I heard they could have more teams next year too at independent schools.
If the number of kids keep growing, yeah.
Okay.
Move to approve?
I would like to vote on these separately. Can I
Oh,
move,
do you?
make a motion to approve the Christian Academy MOA?
Second.
We need a motion to vote on these separately? Okay. So the motion is to vote on these MOAs separately. And we have a second.
Which one are we voting on first? Which one did
I
you say?
said Christian Academy.
Christian Academy.
Okay.
Second, or Kyle second.
Okay. So the motion is to vote on these separately. So all those in favor of that motion say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? Okay. So that motion carries. Okay. So now.
Now I'm
Motion
making
for-
a motion to move forward with approving the TFCA MOA.
Okay.
I will second that.
Okay. So we have a motion to approve the MOA with the Frankfort Christian Academy. We have a second by Commissioner Thompson. Any discussion on this? Okay. All those in favor, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 I'm a no.
All those opposed, say no.
No.
No. Commissioner Unger. Okay, that motion carries. Now I will entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve the Frankfort Independent School MOA.
Okay.
Second.
So we have a motion to approve the MOA with the Frankfort Independent Schools, and we have a second by Commissioner Thompson. Any discussion on this motion? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, that motion carries.
So
Can't
just
hear
have one
Commissioner
opposed
Ray.
on the second one, right?
Did we have
I
a
think
no
it's
on
fine.
that one?
No, on the other one.
Oh, and the other one, you got it.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay.
Just
Just wanted to make note of that.
From now on.
Yeah.
I can't hear. Is Commissioner Ray answering?
Yes, I saw him move his lips.
Okay.
So
Just
this one-
raise your hand. Okay, so
This one is the one, it's 4-1, right?
Okay, moving on to action item number 8, the unmanned aerial vehicle purchase. We have Chief Adams to enlighten us. Give us more
And
information.
that was on the agenda last time that we pulled because of questions about insurance, make sure we had all our ducks in a row and how that was gonna be paid for, so.
So this program will be used for multiple different tasks that the police department is responsible for. Accident reconstruction, crime scene, outdoor crime scene reconstruction, search and rescue. The city police department handles a lot of, for emergency management, handles a lot or helps with search and rescue throughout the whole county. So they'll be capable of helping with that. Observations, keeping an eye on crime scenes or possible investigations. There are guidelines, there are statutes and case law that are very specific about how drones can be used for investigations. So just really, it's given us a tools to use to just to make our investigations more thorough. The technology is just growing, so.
Are those controlled on-site or are they controlled remotely from the EOC or anything of that nature?
They have to be line of sight. That's FAA regulations. We have 4 certified drone pilots that we paid for their certifications. The insurance and the League of Cities approved our policy, which we took from them anyway and just made it ours. So it's they've already been handy. They're pretty amazing, and we've loosely used them before, but to use them as a government, you have to have a lot of regulations in place, and we've put those in where they need to be. So.
And I know with drones, there's like no-fly zones and things of that nature. Is there a lot of no-fly zones that I know one would probably be definitely Fort Boone, and the airport area definitely would probably maybe.
Oddly enough, our airport is not rated high enough to actually have a no-fly zone around it.
Okay.
But there are still, we have to communicate with the different areas and that type of thing. So.
On the height and everything.
And the software we use helps with all of that also.
Okay.
Or will use.
Yeah, I have a friend that had his own, that just got a drone, and his won't even go beyond the gray area. If he's flying, it literally will stop the drone. So.
I was up in Cincinnati yesterday, and because they had I guess it was a baseball game going on within the area that we were in, the friend of mine couldn't launch his because the software wouldn't let him. So it's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Will this be the first 3 drones that the city's owned? Or?
As far as I know, we did purchase a smaller, cheaper one that runs on the same platform to practice with, because that way they don't, destroy an expensive one. It operates on the exact same software. So, but other than that one, as far as I know.
That's awesome.
So,
Are most of these, the use of these drones for investigations post-crime, or are they prevention of crime?
Most of the time it'll be post. Accident reconstruction for sure, obviously. And KSP actually showed us a demonstration of, we had the incident where the pedestrian was struck up on East Main about a month and a half ago, 2 months, the juvenile, and KSP came in and reconstructed that with their drone and some of the stuff they have, and just amazing what they can provide.
Will the city of Frankfort be utilizing these drones to watch over high crime areas?
Not high crime areas, no.
Okay. That was a concern that.
that's the concern, I guess, is privacy. What steps do we have in place for those who may think that that may think that these are going to be flying 24/7?
Right. No, they're definitely not. They could be used to watch a house ahead of time, but it's a very specific location.
Right.
If you're going to write a search warrant and use the information from a drone, you have to be very specific about that in the search warrant. We won't be recording things unless we know there's a crime going on. for multiple reasons. One, evidence and open records. But that simplifies things also.
And
no,
FAA
we won't be
mandates
just
are
spying
very
on
strict on drones and crowd sizes and what you can fly over, what you can't fly over, so.
Thank you for answering
Any
that.
questions, any more questions, discussion?
Move to approve.
We have the motion to approve the purchase of the 3 unmanned aerial vehicles. We have a second, Commissioner Unger, and I'm going to ask the clerk to please call the roll on this one. City Clerk, thank you.
Commissioner Waldridge?
Yes.
Commissioner Thompson?
Yes.
Commissioner May?
Yes.
Commissioner Unger?
Yes.
Mayor Wilkerson?
Yes. Okay, thank you. Motion carries. See, that way we get Commissioner May's vote on there. That's important.
Okay.
You're used to Zoom.
Yeah.
Eyes are easier.
Okay, and the next action item, School Violence Prevention Program. Chief Adams.
So we are requesting permission to apply for a grant for another piece of equipment. This is a scanner that can be used to create 3D images. It would be used, along with this grant, it would be used in the schools to be able to build 3D images or renderings of the school systems, or the different school buildings, I should say. It could also be used in any other building, but primarily the schools. And it goes along with some of the reconstruction software that we already or that we're looking at also, to go with the drones. So you can build whole buildings. They demonstrated it. They built the half of the second floor of the public safety building, and you could actually walk through the building with the 3D imaging. So we'll be able to do that with the school system, and then the police and fire will have very, very good, accurate information on the way the buildings are laid out. It does everything. It even got the patch on my shoulder. I mean, it's very detailed.
From outside.
Well, no, we were inside the building.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Okay.
it sits on a tripod, but it will work outside also, and so you can use it for crime scenes and that type of thing also.
So if we don't receive the grant funding, would you still be wanting to purchase that equipment, or is this, so this is for approval of applying for the grant, is that right?
Yeah, no, it would definitely be equipment worth purchasing. But it obviously would be better if it was through the grant.
Yeah, right.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
So is this to approve if we get the grant, and if we don't get the grant, we'll have
To
to
apply for the
we'll
grant.
just
This is
apply for it.
permission to
Okay.
apply for it.
Yeah.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to apply for the School Violence Prevention Program grant. We have a second by Commissioner Unger. Any other discussion on this? Okay. I'll ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Commissioner Waldridge?
Yes.
Commissioner Thompson?
Yes.
Commissioner May? Commissioner Unger?
Yes.
Mayor Wilkerson?
Yes. And we've already gone through action item number 10. Thank you, Chief. Action item number 11, we have a first reading. Looking for a sponsor.
Sponsor.
Commissioner Waldridge sponsors, and ask City Solicitor Ross to take it from here.
An ordinance amending ordinance number 12, 2020 series, appropriating the revenue to be received by the City of Frankfort for the fiscal year 2020-2021. This ordinance amends ordinance number 12, 2020 series, appropriating the revenue to be received by the city for the fiscal year 2020-2021 by adding the following expenditures. Capital Improvement Fund, $530, golf cart improvements, $66,495.
Any discussion? Seeing none, without objection, we'll ask the.
That's all we need.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, Ms. Discussion of the tentative agenda. This is for our next voting meeting, regular meeting on June 28th. Yes, Commissioner Thompson.
Would June 28th be a
proper time to discuss the project that we have discussed with Frankfort Independent Schools and Franklin County High School and K-State?
Yes.
Okay. Do you want me to name it or just?
I think we'll just, if it's ready, we'll put it on
Understood.
there, right?
Thank you.
Yeah. Would,
Is that the tech? I don't know what
what about, do we need to do a TIF second reading?
We actually need to do that prior to the June 28th meeting, so if possible, if we do a special meeting for the budget, if we could just put that on there and quickly
Okay.
handle that, that'd be great.
Yeah, we discussed it next Friday.
What,
this
do we
coming
need to do
Friday.
it, okay, if we did it Friday?
That'd be great.
Okay, we'll talk
No.
about that.
Not Friday? She shook her head no.
Friday's a little crazy. I think Kelly might be traveling Friday as well,
That's,
and that's a busy day for me.
is it okay, is Thursday okay for everyone?
It's fine. I mean, I'll make myself available.
Maybe Thursday morning?
Thursday would work for me.
Commissioner May, would Thursday work?
It'd be fine.
Thursday morning, perhaps?
Sure.
Not too early.
Things are getting busy.
I'm trying to catch up.
You know the world is opening back up, Mayor. We got things to do. It's
So-
not as easy to Zoom.
I'm trying to get with Commissioner Walter to go over the budget, either Wednesday or
Do
Thursday.
not use me as an example. No, that's fine. We'll work it out.
Okay, I didn't want you to come into the budget meeting and not having a clue.
I know, all right.
What time are you thinking, Mayor, on Thursday?
I am not available on Thursday, definitely from 2 to 3.
About 10 or 11 a.m.
Are you gonna make that quick? Is that what you're saying?
Can we do 10?
Quick.
Can we do 10?
We can do 10.
10 on Thursday.
Ask a guy on vacation.
Can you do 10?
Commissioner May, 10 a.m. Thursday.
There we go. Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
so
And then
that,
we can do budget maybe later on that afternoon.
we could do budget that more, we could do budget and the TIF second reading.
On
Okay.
Thursday? You gonna do the first reading, then do the budget after the first reading? That's all right. I
Okay,
mean,
Wednesday. I'll try to go with you on Wednesday.
Okay, so I feel like we have Thursday squared away, right?
all right, Thursday, 10 a.m.
Okay, and that's budget.
'Cause mine's pretty easy. I just have a few questions.
Huh?
I said I think mine's pretty easy. I just had a few
Okay,
questions.
all right.
Okay. So the June 28th voting meeting, is it possible you think quadricycles are gonna be ready for,
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
to be ready?
You ready
That
to
one's
ride,
way far
aren't you?
along.
Ready to go?
Mayor's ready to ride. He's ready to pedal on.
Bobby, can we have a link for that in case we have to do something? Okay, thank you.
First person up.
I get the first ride. Okay, what about abandoned properties? You think that's too soon?
Yes.
I don't
Okay.
think that'll make it. Quadricycles is the closest to be readily available right now.
Okay. Any other tentative agenda items? Okay. All right. So next item is unfinished business.
I have unfinished business.
Okay.
I just would like an update from Blair, Ms. Hecker, just on where we are in the gift card, because we're just down to almost a week, I guess, or a week and a half or something like that. So I asked her to sort of give us an update of where we are and what our next steps would be. I know that we have discussed those that are not spent by the deadline, that we could maybe create an opportunity to where, I believe the mayor brought up that if you buy 25 or you buy an amount, then you can get 25 or whatever that is. And I know we spoke about, we're not sure what that increment would be, that you would check in on that, but I would like to know where we're at, how many we've used, where we're at as far as that number, and how we can move forward productively.
Sure. So if you will remember, we are down to just about 10 more days of our free gift cards. No, a little bit longer than that, about 15 more days of our free gift cards, June 30th. As of the time the meeting started, we have used 2,052 of those. So we're just a little over the halfway point. That's about 48,000. Okay, so almost about at our halfway point of that $100,000 as well. On June 30th, if you remember the agreement that we have with Yifty, we are given the funds back anything that is unspent minus our $5,000 processing fee that we paid for those cards. So we'll know, closer to what that balance is going to be. If the commission, we can just take that money back. We gave it into that program. We used it for those free cards. We'll get that money back. So that is one option. Another option would potentially be to reinvest it back into this program. My suggestion, if the commission decides to go that route, would be to do that as like a matching program, just because I think that's going to be the easiest and easiest for the platform. So I did reach out and ask Yifty, if we did that route, we know July 1st, if we decide to just take the money back, they'll cut us a check, it'll be in the mail, and we'll be done with that. I did send them an email this afternoon just to ask logistically how that would work, how we could set up the matching program, what our options would be, and I'm happy to pass that along, any information I get.
Yeah, I'm really interested in your option of putting that back into the program, continuing it into the program and doing a matching. If, you buy 25, you get 25 back. And just because now we're open, Frankfort's opening back up, the world's opening back up, and we have the Mix event coming up. I know that won't help, but, the Mix event is the kickoff to us being more lively downtown and bringing people downtown. But I do think the first, if we could get it done exponentially, I guess, maybe, I don't know what that difficulty would be, but having maybe those cards going out where people can buy and get matched maybe by the first concert series, so people can use those cards maybe.
Only to the people who didn't use their cards, right?
No, so this would be open, so a matching program, it would be open as it is right now, where anyone could go online and purchase the card.
Okay, I got you.
And then we could, I think, set that increment, whether we match, this is what I'm asking about, if we have the option to match dollar for dollar, or if we just have to set an amount, like we'll match $25 for any purchase, I'm not sure yet.
And are you gonna leave that time frame open-ended?
Yeah, so then I think with that, we could probably set a date on it if we wanted to, or we could leave it open-ended. The
Until
gift cards, I think, would be their purchase value would fall under what the regular purchase rules are, which is those are valid, the value of those are valid for a year after the purchase date.
Have we gotten any information, or has anybody in the city told us why they're not using them, or do they just forget about them, or?
I think it's a forget thing. This is one of the things that UFD actually just kind of warned us about when we did this, is that typically you don't see as high of a participation rate when people don't have some skin in the game also, so to speak. So, we gave away a large amount, and we are hearing on the positive side. I've heard from several businesses who have had people come in who have said they've never been to that business before and have come in solely because they got a gift card. So, I think we are seeing a lot of that. We do have reminders set weekly or bi-weekly, I always forget, through EFT, so people are getting those directly to their inbox. We've asked the merchants to put it out. Things are opening back up, as we were just talking about, so there's still plenty of time to get out there and use it and, spin those up.
And I assume Yifty will charge their transaction fee to those people who are buying a $25.
Yeah, so the way I understand it is then that we would just put the money back in. We would not have a processing transaction. It would just be on the card purchaser as it is. But they would only pay the processing fee on their purchase amount. It wouldn't be our full contribution as well.
Okay.
So is that something I guess we'll need to vote on at the next meeting before the June 30th deadline to approve the action on that?
Probably.
Okay.
So I'll come prepared with that information from EFD about how we can do that, if we can just reinvest it into the program, if we have to wait, get a check back, and then cut another check, and
I think the term.
And the term, yes, I'll find out about the terms
same
as well.
businesses are, that they've already
The same,
registered, so
yeah.
they're eligible.
And more businesses, it's still open, so it's a rolling thing. If there are any others who are, just haven't gotten a chance to register yet, we can still have them sign up as well.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Blair.
Okay. I don't think we had any other unfinished business from last meeting. We'll move on to new business.
I have one item.
Commissioner Waters.
Give me one moment. I apologize. I'm trying to bring up an email because my computer's acting up. I had one just thing of business that I would like for the commission to consider in doing, and that would be the proclamation for Juneteenth to be a holiday here in Frankfort.
Juneteenth.
It's not been done. There's more communities that are doing this, and with Juneteenth just right ahead, I think it would be fitting. I've looked at a couple of other areas that have already passed the proclamation, and some of that language I can read some, and definitely would work with Laura on that language. This is something that I would definitely like for the whole entire commission to sign on and be supportive of, and not just coming from one entity. Like as a BOC, I want everyone. I think it's something that we all want more than just being a vote. It says proclamation, whereas President Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation on January 1st, 1863, declaring the slaves in Confederate territory free, paving the way for the passing of the 13th Amendment from formally abolished slavery in the United States of America. And whereas word about signing the Emancipation Proclamation was delayed for 2.5 years to June 19, 1865, and reaching authorities and African Americans in South and Southern Western United States. And whereas Emancipation Day observation are held different days in different states in the South and Southwest and those parts of the nation. And whereas June 19th has been a special meaning to African Americans and is called Juneteenth, combining the words June and the 19th, and has been celebrated by African Americans communities for over 150 years. Whereas the annual Juneteenth celebration in different cities can take place in like a weekend or a week, like the 19th and the 20th, or we can do one day. But this would be something that would come from our BOC and hopefully do an option of what we had stated last time of maybe getting everyone to make sure that we sign it so we can have a 5 vote and a 5 signature on this, that we're all on that rather than just a vote. But this is the information. I can send it to you if you'd like, a start with some verbiage, but we also have other verbiage. I know I'd spoke with you to see if we'd already had something like that as far as a date, and I don't think you didn't send anything to me, so I assumed that we weren't able to find anything. So I would like to put this on to be able to pass for Juneteenth.
Well, can we vote on it now because it's the 14th of June right now?
Right.
Yeah.
So, if I may, Mayor, I'm just trying to think what's the best way to go about doing this, since proclamations, we talked about it last time, and they are signed by the mayor. If this is something you all want to sign off on, though, we can certainly do that. I would say you need a vote to declare it tonight, and what we could maybe do is create a signature page where, the proclamation would look like it normally does, but we would have an added signature page where each of you could sign off on it. So something that's kind of on the fly.
Is this better as a resolution?
It could be better. It really would be better as a resolution. My concern is we don't have one in front of us. So, I think the proclamation works fine, and that they could certainly sign off that, the whole board is supportive, or whoever on the board is supportive. And we can do it that way, or I can go try to draft a resolution really quickly.
We're going to meet on Thursday.
I was going to say, we've got to meet
We're
Thursday.
going to meet on Thursday.
That is true.
And I just want it to be a day, and whether it's a resolution or a proclamation, they're basically really the same.
The
It's
same.
just of saying that we're going to celebrate it, that Frankfort declares the 19th as that date, and we're celebrating it. And I think this is just a step forward as we are, exploring the opportunities of a diversity candidate,
Why don't you
structure.
all,
So
if my suggestion then let's do it as a resolution, and let's bring it on Thursday then.
Okay.
If-
okay, and I can send you some of this verbiage.
That'd be
if you'd
great.
Like, but
Perfect. We'll
should
get it
we
done.
go ahead?
Should be quick.
Okay, so just ask staff to move forward with that,
That's,
and then we can do a vote
Does
at
anyone have
Thursday's
an
meeting.
objection?
I don't have an objection, but I know most of our proclamations and things of that nature and resolutions, we don't necessarily, put them in the paper or, celebrate them. Would the commission be interested in specifically paying for the space I assume it would be ad space to have the formal proclamation or resolution put in the paper?
I think that'd be great.
Get that done if we do it Thursday.
And it could be read at the event on Saturday. And we could do it on Juneteenth.
I think our only concern is the publication deadlines for the paper. We could certainly do it, but it just may.
Austin,
Hey, Austin.
Yeah.
can you start working on that? Okay.
You need to come up here and speak.
I am Austin with the State Journal.
We'll move forward with that, yeah.
Okay, with that, yeah, we'll vote on that on Thursday.
Okay, great, thank you.
So I've got three things on Thursday, resolution, TIF, and the budget, right?
Right.
10 a.m. Thursday.
Thursday.
It's gonna be quick, Tommy. Don't worry.
It's
I
gonna be
got
quick.
all the
Every
faith
meeting's
that-
quick.
I've got all the faith in the world in it.
Thank you all for hanging in there and watching at home. And,
Anyone else
no,
have
no other new business? Commissioner Mann, okay?
Mayor asked that we go into executive session per KRS 618101F. Personnel discussions may lead to the appointment of a new city manager. Action may be taken in open session.
Okay, we have a motion to go into executive session, and we have a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. Okay, motion carries. We'll now go into executive session.
Are you staying in here?
I believe we're going to the conference.
All right, we're now back in open session. Thanks for waiting.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to offer the position of city manager to Laura Haig for $140,000 a year.
Okay, we have a motion to offer the city manager position to Laura Haig with a salary of $140,000 a year. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion. We have a second. Any discussion?
Oh, gosh. I just think this, I'm sorry, Mayor.
Commissioner Watridge.
I just don't think this is the direction we need to go. I think this is non-transparent to our city. And I'm just not okay with this.
Any other discussion?
Mayor, if I
Commissioner Thompson.
It's unfortunate that we are in the position that we are in because of the time and the situations that have occurred over the last 6 months. It was my hope way back in November after the election that we would be able to address the issue of city manager immediately and begin a nationwide search. That could have taken a couple months to be able to get enough people in. We didn't address it. In March, we became aware of the situation that once again we had an issue with regard to timing and the fact that we should make a decision. The city commission agreed at that point to not make a change and to essentially not make an offer or to at least complete the city manager search. Now we are 6 months into our first term. We're essentially a quarter of the way through our full term, and we are just now getting to this situation. It was readily apparent several weeks ago that there was a majority of folks who held the opinion to offer this position to Ms. Haig. I will not stand in the way of that motion, as I believe the alternatives that were presented were not as good for the city. So I will in a few short minutes be voting for Ms. Haig. I wish her well. I hope she accepts, and I hope that we have a transformational leadership at the top of our organization. and that this city commission can work well with her. I just feel that the stones were cast way before this process started. So that's all that I have.
Any other discussion? All right. I'll ask the clerk to please call for a vote.
Commissioner Waldridge,
City Clerk, I will have to vote no in this election. I'd like to explain my vote, please. I do not agree with this commission whatsoever in this process. It's shown a lack of integrity in the process by promising this job to a candidate before the job was posted, as I stated in the past meeting that has been recorded. It has lacked transparency in closed session. It has shown disrespect to other candidates by wasting their time with interviews and also wasting the city funds with travel expense for bringing in people they never intended to hire. I have never gone along with any crowd just to save face. Doing that leads to what happened with Keith Parker. Two individuals not really wanting a city manager to be city manager, however, gave a 5 vote just to save face. But the vote was just to get along, just to go. And then what happens? We fire a great city manager. My oath taken on behalf of you, the residents of Frankfort, is to stand firm on my integrity, transparency, and what is best for our city. I do not agree to hire someone clearly stated that she does not know city government. In this case, we will not only have a city manager who has said she does not know city government, and we will also have a new mayor and completely almost a new city commission now learning city government. The knowledge, which means that our staff will now be challenged to train a city manager and get someone else acclimated with how city management goes in our city. Each day and time is of essence for Frankfort to move forward, not to train someone to get caught up. It's time to move forward. This is not the right decision for our city. I also was bothered and taken away by diversity conversations. She had mentioned in a diversity conversation that many masters shouldn't be sitting at a table. That to me did not show the means of working together. That by all means is not a slip of conversation. That is the mind of one individual. I will not nor ever continue to work on or vote just because someone wants a 5 vote. I will always stand true to you as your city commissioner to let you know transparency and what is true in this process. I will, however, as your city commissioner, as your elected official, work with the BOC and the new city manager named as a professional and elected official for the residents of this city. I am disheartened that we have gone through and we have wasted time in this situation when I felt just now that we were in between a rock and a hard place and sort of almost pushed to say we were voting for Ms. Hagg, or the alternative would be possibly keeping the city manager we have now, which are 2 individuals who are not qualified for the city manager position. So I do not agree with this moving forward. I do deeply care about my city and where we are at. We are in an economic drive right now to move forward, and to have someone that just looks good on a resume and someone that we think we can get along with is not appropriate for this city at this time. As I stated, I will work with the city manager, the mayor, the other BOCs, the city clerk, and the solicitors moving forward. However, I will stand by my choice, and I will not be pushed to push a 5 vote just because. There were other people who applied after the fact, giving that the mayor's questions and his comments were, we are going to open up again this position and to hire for it, and we will give everyone the opportunity to interview. Again, that was a lie from our mayor. That was not the opportunity. You allowed people to apply and you did not interview them. You went with your number 1 choice since day 1. There is no way we can go from Mr. Hutka, who we actually gave a position to or offered a position to Laura. If you want, you could look at their resumes. Clearly, there is a difference. I'm all for one city manager getting along with the city by all means. But we need someone that's going to come in and get the job done. And I do hope that Ms. Hagg will be a person that will come in and do her part and move forward. But I do not agree with this situation, but I will represent you, the city of Frankfort, and do all that I can to have a best working environment with this BOC and the new city manager. Thank you.
Commissioner Thompson,
Yes.
Commissioner May,
Yes.
Commissioner Unger,
Yes.
Mayor Wilkerson.
Yes. Motion carries.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.